The world has been taken over by monsters, and humanity's fight for survival began with a game called BattleNet. What started in 2010 as a competition between nations eventually became something far more terrifying. By 2022, BattleNet had transformed into the Space League, where humanity was forced to fight against powerful races from across the universe. If players died in these battles, they died in reality, and after years of losing, humanity was pushed to the brink of extinction. Then, during a demotion match in Manhattan, New York, things go completely insane. The players are suddenly confronted by the Apocalypse Behemoth, a gigantic monster powerful enough to destroy the entire battlefield. The quest was to eliminate the behemoth before it wipes out the world. The monster prepares to annihilate everyone in one attack, and just when it looks like humanity is finished, our MC, Seong Ji-han, appears. He flies straight through the behemoth's devastating attack and lands a single punch directly on its face. The impact is so powerful that the monster is completely crushed, and Ji-han takes down the Apocalypse Behemoth all by himself. But even after witnessing that ridiculous display of power, the world's #1 player, Baron Williams, doesn't treat Ji-han like a hero. Baron is the leader of the America First Guild, and instead of rewarding the man who actually killed the boss, he takes control of the reward himself. The reason is simple and disgusting. Ji-han is Korean. Korea has already been destroyed, and even though Ji-han became a naturalized American, Baron and the others still don't consider him one of their own. To them, he's nothing more than a useful foreigner who should be grateful for whatever scraps they give him. Ji-han has already reached World Rank 7 and possesses the terrifying SSS rank Nameless Divine Arts, yet none of that is enough to earn their respect. He is still treated with racism and prejudice because of where he came from, and then humanity gets its final chance to survive. The demotion match results are revealed, and out of the remaining countries on Earth, only 2 manage to survive. Humanity has failed, since another race has also failed its match. The system gives both sides one final deciding battle. Humanity will fight orcs. Baron confidently decides that he can handle the match without Ji-han and enters the arena as humanity's representative, but his confidence lasts only a few seconds. The moment the battle begins, one of the orcs rushes forward and easily tears Baron's head off. The world's #1 player is killed in a single attack. The remaining human fighters are slaughtered one after another. Humanity loses the deciding match, and the system declares the entire human race worthless. Since humanity has been eliminated from the Space League, black voids start opening across Earth. The planet itself begins collapsing as everything is swallowed into darkness. Cities, people, and the entire world are consumed as humanity is completely erased. Ji-han, already heavily injured, is dragged into that darkness with everyone else. It looks like this is the end of everything, but somehow, Ji-han survives. His Nameless Divine Arts protects him from the world's destruction, leaving him as the only human still alive. The system recognizes that this seemingly insignificant survivor still possesses limitless potential, and the heavenly beings watching from above decide that allowing him to die here would be a waste. So instead of letting him disappear with humanity, they give him one final chance. Ji-han suddenly wakes up in South Korea in 2020, years before the Space League turns into humanity's death sentence. At first, he can't believe what he's seeing. The world is still normal. People are still living ordinary lives. Korea is still standing. For the first time, he truly believes he has returned to the past. Opening his status window, he confirms he's back at level 2, exactly where he was when he first entered the BattleNet League. Hope immediately fills him. This time, he remembers everything. If he uses the knowledge from his previous life, he can rewrite the future. No, he has to rewrite it. He refuses to let the world end the same way again. At this point, South Korea is still one of the strongest countries because it has Yoon Sejin, the legendary Sword King, a member of the top 11 and the world's 3rd-ranked human. Thanks to him, Korea consistently ranks near the top of the East Asia League, but Seong knows that isn't where the story stays. Suddenly, the news broadcasts an announcement that shocks the entire country. Yoon Sejin reveals he's changing his name to Ryuhei, becoming a Japanese citizen, and joining Japan's new defense force in July 2020. It becomes one of the biggest betrayals in BattleNet Korea's history, and Seong realizes he has returned to the exact day it all began. The moment he sees Sejin's face, his anger instantly returns. After the Sword King's departure, South Korea's rankings collapsed. News reports question the country's future, while experts try reassuring everyone that the situation isn't hopeless. They claim Korea still has promising young players and should comfortably remain among the top 20 in the East Asia League. Seong already knows they're completely wrong. No one ever appears who can truly replace Yoon Sejin. Even if someone had the talent, there simply wasn't enough time because BattleNet soon transforms from a competitive game into the Space League, where matches become real battles for survival and dying inside the game means dying in reality. Soon afterward, low-ranked monsters begin invading countries around the world and massacring innocent people. Without the Sword King, South Korea is unable to stop them. Looking back, every survivor reaches the same conclusion. If Yoon Sejin had remained in Korea, things might have turned out differently. To make matters worse, Sejin wasn't just Korea's greatest player, he was also Seong's brother-in-law. He married Seong's older sister before eventually abandoning everyone. Furious, Seong punches his photograph, still unable to understand why his sister ever fell for someone like that. Deep down, he also wonders whether everything could have changed if she had somehow survived. Once he calms himself, Seong admits it feels good to be back, but his current stats are absolutely terrible. Looking at them, he can't even complain because his younger self spent those days drinking and playing games instead of training. Back then, he never realized how valuable his F-rank gift, Wanderer's Eye, actually was. Since everyone receives the chance to become a player at 18 years old, only some are lucky enough to awaken a gift. Seong believed this was worthless, and only used it to analyze players before gambling on Battle.net matches. He had no idea its true power only appeared after awakening. Still, dwelling on the past won't help him now. With stats this low, he should still be level 1, yet somehow he's already level 2. After thinking for a moment, he suddenly remembers the experience potion. In his previous life, someone accidentally drank it and gained a level by mistake. A second later, he realizes that the embarrassing idiot had actually been himself, but another mystery quickly catches his attention. Somehow, he has 100,000 achievement points, which should be impossible since he hadn't accomplished anything before entering the league. Suspecting his regression changed something, he opens his inventory and is stunned to discover an EX rank exchange voucher. It turns out to be a special privilege awarded exclusively to the last survivor who chose to challenge fate once again. The voucher allows achievement points to be exchanged and cannot be transferred to anyone else. Using it immediately unlocks a hidden feature called the Conquest Shop. Even Seong is shocked because he never knew something like this existed. At shop level 1, it offers a shop upgrade, status window expansion, and an extra class slot. Thinking future upgrades might unlock even better rewards, he upgrades the shop instead of buying anything. Level 2 unlocks inventory expansion, so he upgrades again. Level 3 unlocks an extra title slot, but he can't use it yet, leaving him with only 50,000 points. Only then does he realize each upgrade costs more than the previous one. Reaching level 4 would leave him with just 10,000 points, making him hesitate between purchasing his unlocked upgrades or continuing to level the shop. True to his gambling instincts, he risks everything and upgrades the Conquest Shop to level 4 anyway. The gamble pays off immediately by unlocking Emergency Recovery, an incredible feature capable of restoring broken items. The moment he sees it, he knows the risk was worth taking. Sometimes gambling really does pay off. Without wasting another second, Seong heads toward a heavily secured player facility. After scanning his fingerprint, the system recognizes him as a family member and grants him access to the first player room. He's surprised it still identifies him as family, despite everything that happened in the future. Once inside, the inventory links directly to Battle.net, allowing him to retrieve the very first hidden treasure he planned to obtain, the broken brush of Dongfang Shuo. He immediately activates emergency recovery, and the shattered brush slowly repairs itself. Once the restoration is complete, 2 brilliant jewels appear as the artifact returns to its original SS rank form. The brush once belonged to a legendary figure who maintained a bond with it for 180,000 years. Just then, the system announces that the Battle.net League tutorial will begin in 10 seconds. With almost no time remaining, Seong quickly opens his status window and writes 2 special characters using the restored brush. He reveals that this exact technique was the secret behind reaching World Rank 7 and earning the title of Martial Saint during his previous life. The brush combines his strength, agility, and vitality into a unique stat known as martial power, something everyone overlooked because they believed the brush was nothing more than a broken relic. As the transformation finishes, Seong is transported into the tutorial arena. The first mission is straightforward. Survive the Colosseum by enduring both the monsters and the other 100 participants until only 50 players remain. The moment he arrives, he immediately checks his status, wondering whether martial power really transferred over. A smile appears when he confirms it worked. His 3 physical stats have successfully merged into 5 points of martial power. He also earns the unique tribute achievement, rewarding him with another 10,000 conquest points. Seong grins, knowing this is only the very first step toward reclaiming the nameless divine arts, but it's already enough to dominate the Bronze League. The system then warns him that he entered the match without connecting to a battle connector, meaning every ounce of pain he experiences will be completely real. That reminds him of something ridiculous from his previous life. Wealthy players could actually reduce in-game pain simply by purchasing better battle connectors, and Yoon Sejin owned one that reduced pain by 99%. Deciding to make full use of every new advantage, Seong opens his achievement window. Suddenly, an unlimited mission appears, something that never existed before. The objective is to finish first in the tutorial, rewarding him with 1,000 conquest points. Delighted by this unexpected opportunity, he confidently believes martial power makes the mission easy. But just as the tutorial officially begins, another participant suddenly appears behind him and swings a sword straight at his back. Song instantly senses something wrong, calmly catches the blade between two fingers, turns around wearing a terrifying grin, and immediately decides the overconfident rookie has just become the perfect choice for his very first kill of this new life. Seong Jihan briefly explains how guilds work. As more people around the world became involved with BattleNet, countries began pouring resources into training stronger players, while massive corporations started building organizations dedicated to producing elite talent. South Korea was no different. Large and small guilds quickly appeared across the country, and many of them were already producing exceptional rookies, even during the early days of the league. The battlefield they were currently standing in was the Gangnam Bronze League, the stage where every major guild sent its most promising newcomers to make their debut. As the system announced that the match would begin shortly, one nervous rookie tried calming himself down. His name was Do Hyuk-yu, a member of the prestigious Twin Star Guild, which was directly backed by the powerful Twin Star Group. Before receiving his gift, he had been nothing more than an ordinary teenager, but awakening an A-rank gift instantly changed his life. Since only a handful of people ever received an A-rank ability, he convinced himself that simply surviving until the top 50 would be easy. Looking around, he noticed players from major guilds already sizing each other up. Their expensive equipment alone was enough to tell him they weren't people he wanted to provoke. Staying alive was more important than acting brave. Then, his eyes landed on Seong Jihan. Wearing nothing but sweatpants and a sleeveless shirt, Seong looked completely out of place. To Do Hyuk-yu, he looked like the easiest free elimination imaginable. Delighted by his luck, he decided this would be his first victim. The instant the tutorial officially began, he rushed forward with his sword, convinced the fight would be over in a single strike. Instead, reality hit him much harder than expected. Seong casually stopped the incoming sword with nothing but 2 fingers, leaving Do Hyuk-yu completely speechless. He couldn't understand how anyone could block an attack backed by his A-rank agility so effortlessly. Before he could recover from the shock, Song simply flicked the blade upward with those same 2 fingers, sending both the weapon and its owner stumbling backward. Calmly looking at the rookie, Seong mocked him for entering the Gangnam League with skills like that. The comment immediately offended Do Hyuk-yu, who proudly defended his A-rank agility. Seong's response made it clear he wasn't impressed at all. Enraged, the rookie poured even more aura into his sword before unleashing his fastest attacks. Even Seong admitted that, with his current level 2 body, the boy's speed was faster than his own physical abilities, but experience was an entirely different story. Compared to the countless life and death battles Seong had survived in his previous life, the rookie's attacks looked painfully predictable. Every slash, every movement, and every opening was obvious to him. He effortlessly dodged every swing by the smallest margin, calmly weaving around the attacks while quietly admitting to himself that adjusting to such a weak body wasn't easy. If he still possessed his old strength, this fight would have ended instantly. Frustrated beyond belief, Do Hyuk-yu desperately launched another strike, only for Seong to casually slap the sword aside, knocking it completely out of his hands. Before the rookie could even process what had happened, Seong leaped forward, caught the falling sword, landed behind him, and drove the blade straight through his neck. Even while dying, Do Hyuk-yu refused to believe he had been defeated so easily. His final thought was that he would surely win the next time they met, and strangely, realizing there could even be a next time made this world seem almost comforting. Just like that, Song claimed the first elimination of the tutorial and earned 100 conquest points. He also notes that whenever a player dies, all of their equipment disappears along with them. Now that he had warmed up, he knew he needed to increase his pace. If he wanted to secure first place, 5 kills would probably be enough. As expected, everyone around him was still too focused on hunting other players to pay attention to the monsters roaming the arena. The tutorial counted both player and monster kills, but each monster was worth only 0.1 of a player kill, meaning 10 monsters were needed to equal a single elimination. Since the monsters, especially the orcs, traveled in dangerous groups, most participants considered hunting them a complete waste of time. Then the system suddenly issued another mission: annihilate the orc group. Around 30 orcs, the strongest monster pack in the Colosseum, had to be wiped out completely in exchange for 500 achievement points. Seeing that the reward was 5 times larger than the first kill bonus, Seong accepted without hesitation. Compared to the real orcs he had fought during humanity's war for survival, these creatures were nothing more than practice targets. Without a hint of fear, he charged directly toward them. The orcs stared in confusion as a nearly unarmed human sprinted straight at their formation before immediately hurling their axes to kill him. Seong calmly caught the incoming weapons and threw them right back, killing several orcs instantly. Panic spread through the group. Before they could react, Seong had already appeared in the middle of their formation. Swinging a single axe, he cut down several more enemies at once. One terrified orc recklessly charged him, prompting the rest of the pack to swarm him together. By then, 5 had already fallen. Holding only one axe, Seong carved through the charging monsters one after another without even changing his position. When another spear flew toward him, he caught it effortlessly, snapped it in half with one hand, and mocked the orcs for loudly announcing every sneak attack. He rushed the frightened attacker, but the worn-out axe shattered against the creature's wooden shield, leaving only the handle behind. Rather than panicking, Seong complained that their cheap weapons weren't even worth using. Thinking they finally had an advantage, the remaining orcs charged him all at once. Seong simply stomped the ground with overwhelming force, launching the entire group into the air. Before they could land, he grabbed the weapons still floating around him and turned them against their owners, slaughtering nearly the entire pack in a single, relentless assault. Spears flew from one body to another, leaving nothing but a trail of corpses behind. The last surviving orc could only wonder whether Seong was actually the real monster before losing his head as well. With that, the orc annihilation mission was complete. Seong received the achievement point reward and even leveled up in the middle of the battle, something that normally shouldn't happen until after the tutorial ended. He assumed it was only possible because his level was still so low. Either way, it worked in his favor. After leveling up, Seong immediately invested his stat points into martial power, the unique attribute that combined strength, agility, and vitality into a single balanced stat. Not only was martial power at least twice as effective as raising ordinary stats, but reaching 30 martial power was also the key requirement for opening the path toward the nameless divine arts. Normally, martial power couldn't be increased by simply spending points. Players had to earn it through real combat experience and relentless training, while stat points merely improved their aptitude for future growth. However, the moment Seong invested his points, martial power actually increased. Even he couldn't hide his surprise. He had no idea why it worked differently after his regression, but if it continued like this, reclaiming his former strength would become dramatically easier. Just as Seong was thinking about how much easier things had become, another attack came flying his way. A nearby archer had already locked onto him and fired an arrow. Seong noticed it immediately and dodged, making him wonder for a second if that had been a magic arrow. The girl looked genuinely excited that someone had managed to avoid her shot, while the tank, fighting beside her, brushed it off as nothing more than luck. She reminded him they didn't have much time left, so they needed to finish Seong quickly. The tank agreed, and jokingly reminded her about their deal, saying the kill wouldn't automatically belong to whoever landed the final blow. Seeing them coordinate so naturally, Seong realized they had formed an alliance. Even though the tutorial was designed to leave only one survivor, there was nothing stopping players from working together until the very end. Judging from the emblem on their equipment, he recognized them as members of one of South Korea's top 10 guilds, the Turtle Guild. Their team composition also made perfect sense. One specialized in close-range combat, while the other covered long-range attacks. Since they belonged to the same guild, they were already accustomed to fighting as partners. Right then, the system announced that only 60 survivors remained, and the tutorial would soon come to an end. Seong was surprised the number had dropped so quickly, and realized that simply avoiding battles would now be enough to survive. Unfortunately for the two guild members, they had already chosen him as their target because of his unimpressive appearance. To make things even more ridiculous, the tank casually turned his back on Seong and started flirting with the archer, promising to hand her the kill if she agreed to have dinner with him afterward. She immediately rejected the offer without hesitation. Meanwhile, Seong quietly checked the rankings and saw he was sitting in first place with 4 kills, while second place only had 3. That gap wasn't safe enough, so he decided to use this fight to secure an even bigger lead. While the archer continued lecturing her partner for flirting at a time like this, Seong suddenly disappeared from where he had been standing. Before either of them could react, he was already beside the archer. Curious to see how much stronger level 6 martial power had made him, he struck her down in a single effortless attack. At almost the same moment, 2 other players elsewhere in the arena died, dropping the survivor count to 58. The tank completely lost his composure, unable to understand how Seong had reached his partner so quickly. Instead of focusing on the fact that they had both come here intending to kill him, he actually complained about Seong attacking a woman. Seong paid absolutely no attention to the hypocrisy. In the blink of an eye, he appeared behind the tank and slammed a heavy blow directly into his back. This time, the man actually felt the impact, but something immediately seemed off to Seong. Smirking confidently, the tank explained that he was wearing an exclusive B-rank armor set, issued by the Turtle Guild. According to him, armor like that made him practically untouchable, and a battered weapon like Seong's wasn't capable of breaking through it. Seong didn't waste time arguing. Instead, he calmly attacked the exact same spot over and over again. Every single strike landed in precisely the same place, gradually cracking the armor, while the tank became more frantic with each hit. Before long, Seong completely punched through the supposedly indestructible B-rank equipment. Looking at the stunned warrior, he coldly remarked that it didn't matter whether his opponent was hiding behind expensive armor or whether he had been fighting alongside a woman. Anyone who entered the tutorial, treating it like a game instead of a battlefield, was nothing but trash. Since the tank wanted to stand there so confidently, Seong decided he could stay exactly where he was a little longer. Moments later, he finished him off without the slightest hesitation. At the same time, Lee Haeyeon and Lim Gaeong are watching the battle unfold from afar. After seeing Seong effortlessly wipe out his opponents, Haeyeon admits that the performance was seriously impressive, but more importantly, she's relieved he wasn't summoned anywhere near her. Otherwise, she believes she might have been eliminated and never managed to hold on to second place in the rankings. Hearing that, Lim Gaeong doesn't seem convinced. Sensing her reaction, Haeyeon gives her a serious warning. If they ever end up in the same match as that mysterious player, she must stay away from him. But before Lim can simply agree, Haeyeon changes her instructions. Avoiding him isn't enough. If there's no other choice, she must either lose to him or defeat him first. But above all, she has to gather as much information about him as possible. Lim accepts the order, though she can't shake the feeling that the boy looks strangely familiar, as if she's seen him somewhere before. Not long afterward, she demonstrates the incredible blade technique that made her famous, filling the battlefield with sakura-like petals. Possessing an S-rank gift, she had been aggressively recruited by the Twin Star Guild and quickly surpassed everyone's expectations after entering the league. She was supposed to hold on to first place for a long time, but Seong's sudden appearance completely turned those expectations upside down. Even Seong himself finds it amusing that he's currently sitting at rank 1 despite only being level 2, having no guild, no proper equipment, and fighting in nothing but worn-out clothes while barefoot. Watching from a distance, even members of the Turtle Guild struggle to believe someone in that condition could already have 6 kills. They can't understand how someone with no gear and no support could possibly dominate the tutorial like this, while Seong continues eliminating players as if it were nothing. After returning home, the system officially announces that Seong finished the tutorial in first place. As a reward, his experience gain permanently increases by 50%, allowing him to jump 3 levels and reach level 6. Since early levels require very little experience, that kind of growth isn't unusual. The system also points out that GP isn't included as part of the tutorial rewards. Without wasting time, Seong spends all of his available stat points on martial power, raising it to 9. After that, he checks the title he earned for clearing the tutorial. Besides granting 20% additional experience inside the league, the bronze title also increases all of his basic stats by 1 point. Looking over the rewards, he's more than satisfied. With 10 martial power, the entire Bronze League should be manageable, and since promotion to the Silver League doesn't happen until level 25, his only priority for now is becoming stronger as quickly as possible. While checking his status, Seong suddenly remembers something important. He still hasn't selected a class. Since basic classes unlock at level 5, the option is now available. Every classless player eventually reaches this moment, and the 4 standard choices are Warrior, Archer, Mage, and Support. During his previous life, Seong chose the Warrior class, making it the path he understood better than anyone else. Picking it again would definitely make his progress much smoother. However, regression gave him access to the achievement shop, meaning he can simply purchase the Warrior class later for 10,000 achievement points whenever he wants. Realizing he no longer needs to follow the same path as before, he finally chooses the class he believes he should have selected from the very beginning. Not long afterward, Seong enters another Bronze League Gangnam match. This time, the mission type is Defense, where players must protect the crystal positioned behind them on top of a tower. From above, Lim Gaeong overlooks an enormous sea of zombies stretching across the battlefield. Before long, all 5 towers will come under attack by the endless undead horde. She notices that she ended up choosing the warrior class once again, and can't help thinking the zombies look absolutely disgusting, with their rotting bodies, drooling mouths, and barely functioning limbs. More players soon arrive at the tower. The group behind her acts overly confident, complaining that they ended up with this map before discussing their defensive formation. Lim quietly evaluates her teammates one by one. She spots an archer wearing B-rank equipment from the LK Guild, along with a mage who doesn't belong to any guild, despite carrying excellent gear. So far, the lineup looks fairly solid, but to her, the most important role in any defense mission is the support, since those battles always become long wars of attrition. Moments later, the support player lands with a loud impact. The instant Lim sees who it is, she freezes in disbelief. Standing there in nothing but plain workout clothes is none other than Seong Ji-han. The others are equally confused. Out of every class available, he actually chose support. About 20 minutes earlier, just before entering the match, the system repeatedly warned Seong that the class he had chosen wasn't suited for him. It even asked him to confirm the decision one last time. Seong ignored every warning because he had only one reason for making that choice. Once the selection was finalized, he officially became a support. To everyone else, it looked like a terrible decision, but Seong knew something nobody else did. Choosing the support class unlocked the divine power stat, and that stat was the key to awakening another unique attribute in the future. The problem was that divine power was notoriously difficult to increase. Unlike ordinary stats, Training barely improved it, and the only reliable method most players knew was spending precious achievement points. Since Seong was already investing everything into martial power, wasting points on divine power was out of the question. Fortunately, he already knew a hidden method that no one else had discovered. Back in the present, Lim Gaeyong stares at Seong in disbelief after realizing he really chose the support class. The guildless mage beside her immediately bursts into laughter, calling the decision completely insane. He complains that this is exactly why he hated the tutorial season. Looking at Seong's worn-out workout clothes and lack of proper equipment, he mocks him as nothing but dead weight. After spending so much money on high-end gear, he has no intention of carrying someone who looks completely useless. Another teammate tries to calm him down, but the mage refuses to stop, insisting that anyone could see what a disaster Seong was. He even declares that he wants nothing to do with the team and claims he can handle everything by himself. Watching the whole scene, Lim quietly thinks the man is far too loud and can't believe she ended up grouped with such an annoying troll. Before the battle has even started, she already feels like the mission has become much more difficult. Then, the entire tower suddenly falls silent. Without saying a word, Seong grabs the arrogant mage with one hand and lifts him into the air. The man immediately panics, screaming for Seong to let him go. Since talking clearly isn't working, Seong simply throws him straight off the tower and into the massive zombie horde below. Everyone can only stare in complete shock. As the mage desperately asks why he would do something like that, Seong calmly replies that the team will do just fine without him. The man's confidence disappears instantly. The moment he revives, he comes back, begging for another chance, and promises he'll cooperate from now on. Seong recognizes him as Kim Gyu-hyuk, and already knows exactly why his attitude changed so quickly. In Bronze League defense missions, every player receives 3 lives. Since Kim has only died once, Seong casually throws him off the tower again. After the second death, Kim is left with just 1 remaining life, meaning one more mistake will eliminate him for good. Now completely terrified, Kim desperately swears he'll do his best and begs Seong not to kill him again. On top of that, he absolutely cannot afford to finish in last place, because doing so would reduce his level. Since he had spent a fortune purchasing one of his skills, losing a level and no longer meeting its requirements would cause that skill to disappear completely. Seong can't help pointing out how dramatically Kim's attitude has changed in only a few moments. Even then, Kim still tries to prove his value by casting another spell. Seong effortlessly deflects the incoming magic and calmly comments that Kim's fire control is actually quite impressive. Kim quickly confirms he's a fire mage, proudly explaining that fire mages are especially effective on zombie defense maps like this. Finally, he reminds Seong that he's already level 15, implying it would be a waste to lose such a valuable teammate. Watching everything from the tower, Lim Gaeyong finally remembers where she had seen the loud mage before. He was Kim Gyu-hyuk, a mage once considered promising enough to join one of Korea's top 10 guilds. Unfortunately, he failed to earn promotion to the Silver League 4 different times. After that, his career completely fell apart, and he became nothing more than a notorious troublemaker. Realizing who he is, Seong immediately relaxes a little. Now that he understands Kim's personality, dealing with him becomes much easier. Even after dying twice, however, Kim still has one condition before helping the team. He demands an apology for being thrown off the tower. The polite teammate quickly tries to smooth things over, saying that's good enough and everyone should simply work together from now on. Kim, however, can't let it go. Still furious, he warns Seong that next time he'll be the one dying. Hearing that, Seong quietly grabs him by the collar again and calmly asks whether he really wants that apology. Before Kim can even respond, Seong swings him through the air like a baseball bat and throws him straight back into the zombie horde below. The mage dies for a 3rd time, completely using up his final life. Without the slightest concern, Seong simply tells the others to get moving and remarks that maybe Kim will learn some manners next time. The polite teammate stands there completely speechless, unable to believe Seong actually eliminated his own teammate, and silently deciding he wants absolutely nothing to do with someone this terrifying. As everyone is still processing what just happened, the zombie assault finally begins. Undead creatures start climbing the walls of every tower. At a neighboring tower, a fire mage immediately incinerates large groups of zombies, earning praise from his teammates. His destructive power is exactly what everyone expects from a fire specialist, and people jokingly comment that if he keeps this up, they might as well relax and roast marshmallows. Back on Seong's tower, the blonde warrior can't help complaining that this is exactly why they needed a mage. He blames Song for letting his pride get in the way and asks how they're supposed to defend the tower now. Song completely ignores the complaints and instead opens his status window. A new chain mission appears, requiring him to finish first among all 10 towers for a reward of 1,000 achievement points. Even he pauses after seeing that objective. Then another mission appears. This one requires him to personally kill 1,000 zombies in exchange for 3,000 achievement points. The requirement sounds almost impossible within the time limit, but the reward is simply too valuable to ignore. While Seong quietly considers his options, Lim continues observing him. Looking at his terrible stats and the fact that he voluntarily chose the support class, She concludes he isn't even worth recruiting into the Twin Star Guild. To her, he looks like a reckless player making one bad decision after another. The blonde warrior eventually loses his patience and demands an answer, asking if Seong is simply ignoring everyone. If he insists on acting alone, then why not fight alone? Seong calmly asks whether he's truly okay with that idea. The warrior confidently says yes, making Seong realize keeping all the zombies for himself would actually make completing the mission much easier. Before he can move, however, Lim steps forward and announces she'll defend the front line while ordering the support to remain safely in the rear. Even if the team is a complete mess, she still intends to fulfill her role properly. Seong simply tells her not to worry, because he'll handle everything himself. He even instructs the warrior to stay behind and focus solely on protecting the archer. While they're still arguing over the plan, a blood zombie, easily recognizable by its enormous swollen head, climbs onto the tower. The blonde warrior immediately warns everyone that blood zombies are completely different from normal undead. Their liquid-like bodies make ordinary physical attacks almost useless, meaning they require the opposite type of power to defeat. Before anyone can react, the monster lunges directly at Seong. Without panicking, he raises nothing more than a simple metal rod and smashes straight through the creature, instantly bursting it apart. As pieces of the blood zombie scatter across the tower, Lim watches in complete disbelief. Surrounding the attack is a pure white sacred flame, making her realize Seong had just used divine power. Seong's true objective quickly becomes clear. Rather than relying on only one class, he's trying to combine the strengths of both martial power and divine power into a single fighting style. As wave after wave of zombies charges toward the tower, he cuts through them using nothing but the metal rod before jumping directly into the horde below and demonstrating unbelievable staff techniques. Even he admits he doesn't know whether killing 1,000 zombies is actually possible, but the reward is worth attempting. By the time he climbs back onto the tower, his personal count has already reached 6 kills, though he still has a very long way to go. He dives back into the undead once again, crushing zombies one after another, with most falling in a single strike. The number quickly climbs to 26, but Seong realizes ordinary attacks still won't work properly against the blood zombies. Instead, he decides to gather them together first, before slowly releasing his divine power to destroy them all at once. Watching from the tower, the others are left speechless. The blonde warrior completely changes his opinion, deciding that if Seong is this ridiculously strong, then a rough personality hardly matters. Someone like him deserves respect. Lim is even more shocked by something else entirely. Seong controls his divine power with flawless precision, wasting almost none of it, something that shouldn't even be possible. On top of that, every single strike lands perfectly on a zombie's head. One after another, the undead continue collapsing until Seong finally reaches 210 kills, fulfilling another hidden condition. The system announces that his understanding of the otherworld relic has deepened, raising his divine power to 7. Smiling to himself, Seong realizes he has accidentally discovered an entirely new method for increasing divine power. To him, this hidden technique is absolutely perfect. As he recalls, relics are nothing more than sacred items waiting to reveal their true potential. While cutting through the zombie horde, Seong remembers something Sophia once told him. Back in 2010, when Earth's tutorial first began, otherworld relics were sold for absurd prices because everyone believed they hid some incredible secret. But after 10 years of searching, nobody discovered anything, so their value steadily collapsed. The particular relic Seong was using had become so worthless that most players didn't even know it existed anymore. Sophia, however, had revealed that she raised her divine power using an otherworld relic. Since she was America's third-ranked player, Seong took her words seriously. At the time, he was stunned by the revelation. Sophia explained that her divine power evolved because of the relic, but only while the tutorial period was still active. Once the tutorial ended, the method no longer worked. When Seong questioned whether that was really possible, she simply pointed out that it was exactly how she became a saint. According to her, repeatedly using an otherworld relic under its specific conditions allowed divine power to grow, although every relic had its own unique requirement. Seong couldn't believe such a simple method remained almost completely unknown. Sophia explained that even if someone heard rumors about it, otherworld relics were incredibly rare, making it nearly impossible to verify the information. She had quietly gathered those relics for herself during the tutorial, while no one else understood their true purpose. She also revealed one final piece of exclusive information. There was one other player secretly buying up otherworld relics. Seong immediately guessed that person must have discovered the same secret. After returning to the Sword Palace penthouse in his previous life, Seong had carefully recorded everything Sophia told him. Looking back through those notes, he realized almost every relic she owned had already been emptied because their divine power had been completely absorbed. That explained everything. The mysterious collector Sophia mentioned turned out to be none other than Seong Jia, his own sister. Alongside Yoon Sejin, She had been recognized as one of South Korea's finest support players and a true national hero. Sadly, her death was already part of history. Thinking back to the relics she left behind, Seong remembered discovering the simple metal rod he was currently using. Its description clearly stated that striking the heads of Eretz would increase divine power. The method couldn't have been simpler. Although the relic had already lost its divine power and even dropped in rank, it remained incredibly durable, making it the perfect weapon for smashing enemies. Watching Seong fight, Lim Gae-yong admits that his physical combat ability alone is already unbelievable, but what truly shocks her is his flawless control over divine power. That level of precision shouldn't even be possible. The blonde warrior is equally amazed, pointing out that despite another tower losing its warrior entirely, their own team has already climbed to rank 5. Then he suddenly realizes they have been standing around watching while Seong fights alone. Before he can react, Lim barely saves him from being bitten by a zombie. Still clearing the battlefield, Seong glances back at Lim and finally realizes why she seems so familiar. She is the legendary Plum Blossom Sword, Lim Gae-yong herself. In the future, she would become one of the strongest candidates to inherit the title of Sword King, only for her story to end tragically when she was eventually killed by Yoon Se-jin. Looking at her now, Seong quietly wonders whether he might accidentally end up changing that fate as well. Lim then calls out to him, asking if she can join the battle. She believes that if they fight together, they still have a chance to climb even higher in the rankings. Seong checks his status window and sees that he has already reached 398 kills, with the team sitting at rank 5. Time is running short, and there is still a long way to go. Even so, if she truly is the future Plum Blossom Sword, then she is more than capable of contributing. He agrees, instructing her to defend the upper section while he handles everything below. Before either Lim or the blonde warrior can respond, Seong jumps straight off the tower. Both of them can only stare with their mouths hanging open. As he falls, Seong pours divine power into the metal rod, activates the relic's ability, forces the energy to gather together, and detonates it the instant he lands. A massive shockwave erupts across the battlefield, blasting huge numbers of undead into the air. The blonde warrior watches in complete disbelief. Thanks to that overwhelming attack, their tower climbs to first place. They successfully clear the defense mission, and Seong also completes the chain quest, requiring him to finish first among all 10 towers. When the battle ends, Seong is far more interested in the rewards than the celebration. To him, the effort was completely worth it, especially since he ended up killing 1,500 zombies, far exceeding the original requirement of 1,000. As everyone leaves the battlefield, the blonde warrior rushes over, repeatedly thanking Seong for carrying the entire team and promising that one day, after becoming stronger, he'll be able to fight alongside him properly. Seong, meanwhile, is already wondering whether that special mission will appear again in future matches. The blonde enthusiastically asks to team up next time, while Lim remains frozen in disbelief. An unaffiliated player, a support, and someone at an even lower level than herself had completely dominated the battlefield. She honestly starts questioning whether BattleNet itself had bugged out. As Seong prepares to leave, Lim quickly stops him. Since she represents the Twin Star Guild, she knows someone with his talent must be recruited immediately. Trying to invite him into the guild, she nervously asks for his phone number, before even explaining why, instantly realizing she completely skipped the introduction she had rehearsed in her head. Embarrassed, she hurriedly explains that she's from the Twin Star Guild, and that this is actually a recruitment offer. Seong simply refuses. His reason is somehow even stranger than the rejection itself. He calmly says he doesn't remember his own phone number at the moment. The answer leaves Lim completely speechless. Before walking away, Seong casually tells her that if they happen to meet again, he'll let her know. Standing there alone, Lim can only wonder what kind of excuse "I forgot my phone number" is, before the embarrassing realization finally hits her. She had just been rejected. Back in reality, Seong remains surprisingly calm after the awkward encounter with Lim Gae-yong. Thinking about it more carefully, he realizes he really wasn't lying. After spending so many years using an American phone number, he genuinely can't remember his old Korean one anymore. Besides, asking someone else for his own number would be pretty ridiculous. Still, that isn't what matters most. The important part is that he already received a recruitment offer, which means his performance definitely caught people's attention. He could have easily asked for Lim's number as well, but since he has no intention of joining any guild right now, there was no reason to. Instead, he opens his status window to check his rewards. His level has increased by 2. He earned 1,500 GP, and his divine power improved as well. Overall, he's satisfied with the results. Hoping to spend those points on another relic, he opens the GP shop, only to discover that 1,500 GP isn't nearly enough. Even though relics are cheaper in 2020 than they would be in the future, they're still far beyond what he can currently afford. Left with no better option, Seong decides to return home and search through his sister's storage room once again. The moment he steps inside the house, something immediately feels different. His eyes slowly drift toward a pair of shoes near the entrance, and he freezes. His heart begins to race as countless emotions hit him all at once. After living through 2 lifetimes, Song carries more regrets than anyone should. Above all else, the greatest burden he has ever carried is failing to protect someone precious. As he stands there in disbelief, a familiar voice suddenly greets him. A young girl casually asks whether he's finally awake and wonders if his hangover has gotten any better. Hearing that voice almost overwhelms him. During his previous life, there were countless things he wished he could have said. If he had ever been given another chance to see her, he wanted to apologize. He wanted to tell her everything, but before he can say any of it, she simply reassures him that everything will be okay. Watching her stand there so confidently, Seong quietly acknowledges how strong she has always been. She proudly agrees, insisting that's exactly why she'll be the one protecting him instead. Those words only deepen the guilt weighing on his heart. In silence, he apologizes to himself for failing to protect both her and her mother after being asked to trust them. Losing them had completely broken him, and no matter how selfish it feels, seeing her alive again is the one miracle he never believed he would receive. Breaking the emotional silence, she casually tells him to stop standing around and come inside to wash his hands. That cheerful smile belongs to Yoon Se-ah, the 17-year-old daughter of Seong Ji-ah, and Seong's beloved niece. Still struggling to believe she's really standing in front of him, Seong asks whether she already returned from Jeju. Se-ah explains that she came back earlier than everyone else. Looking at her brings back countless memories of raising her while his older sister was constantly busy working. After losing his own parents when he was still a child, Se-ah eventually became the only real family he had left. She then mentions that everyone keeps talking about her father. Curious, Seong asks whether Yoon Se-jin called. She quietly says he did, but there was something else. According to Se-ah, her father confessed that he had fallen in love with another woman. Seong immediately understands the rest without needing another explanation. That alone tells her everything she needs to know. Shocked, Se-ah asks the question she had been avoiding all along. Was her father really abandoning her and leaving? Seong calmly confirms it. The other woman had only accepted Yoon Se-jin's feelings on the condition that he left everything behind. Hearing that truth leaves Se-ah speechless, while Song can barely contain his rage toward the man who abandoned not only his country, but also his own daughter. Even now, remembering how much innocent Se-ah suffered because of that selfish decision makes his anger burn all over again. A few moments later, Se-ah notices the broken picture frame and asks if Song was the one who smashed it. He honestly admits it and apologizes, explaining that he simply lost control because he was so angry. After all, no matter what happened, the man in that picture is still her father. Maybe he really had gone too far. To his surprise, Se-ah walks over, punches the already broken frame again, and shatters it even further. She quietly admits she had wanted to do the exact same thing herself. Then she tells her uncle not to apologize because she's genuinely okay. Watching her smile through all that pain reminds Seong that she's always been like this, even after losing her mother. Even after being abandoned by her father, she always hid her own feelings and worried about everyone else instead. But things are different now. Pulling her into a warm hug, Seong gently tells her how much she's grown, joking that she has even learned how to take care of her own uncle. At the same time, he silently makes himself a promise. This time, no matter what happens, he will protect her. He asks her not to keep forcing herself to stay strong all the time. For the first time, Se-ah finally lets her guard down a little and quietly thanks him. Then, almost immediately, she wrinkles her nose and points out that he absolutely reeks of alcohol, leaving Seong with no choice but to admit she isn't wrong. Meanwhile, back at the Twin Star Guild, Lee Hae-yeon can't stop laughing after hearing what happened between Lim Gae-young and Seong Ji-han. Embarrassed beyond belief, Gae-young tells her to either stop laughing or commit to it properly. That only makes Hae-yeon laugh even harder. She admits the situation is serious, but it's also unbelievably funny. She simply can't believe Seong rejected Gae-young with the excuse that he forgot his own phone number. To Hae-yeon, that's one of the worst excuses she's ever heard. Gae-young, however, genuinely blames herself. She insists first impressions are everything and claims she's nothing like Hae-yeon. According to her, she's not even pretty and actually looks more like a man. Hearing that instantly wipes the smile off Hae-yeon's face. She realizes Gae-young is being completely serious. Hae-yeon quickly reminds her how popular she actually is. Everywhere Gae-young goes, people whisper about the legendary Plum Blossom sword, while countless guys work up the courage to ask for her number before chickening out because they're convinced she'll reject them anyway. Hae-yeon even warns her never to say things like that in public because people would be furious hearing someone as admired as Gae-young talk so negatively about herself. After entering the room, Hae-yeon comments that it's just as comfortable as always. Gae-young then asks the obvious question, does Hae-yeon really intend to recruit Seong Ji-han? Without hesitation, Hae-yeon says she has no choice. No matter what the guild elders think or what methods she has to use, she absolutely has to bring him into Twin Star. The pressure from above is already driving her crazy, and even Gae-young agrees that someone with Seong's talent simply can't be allowed to slip away. Right then, Hae-yeon notices a notification on her phone. Someone has suddenly started a live stream. Even though there isn't an important BattleNet match taking place today, Gae-young immediately teases her, asking if she's watching gambling streams again. Hae-yeon quickly fires back, insisting it's strategy analysis, not gambling. Gaeyoung clearly isn't buying that excuse, but the moment they check the stream, both of them freeze. The person broadcasting isn't just anyone, it's Seong Ji-han. On camera, Seong calmly checks whether the stream has started properly, before asking Yoon Se to step back for a moment. Once she's safely out of the way, he channels holy power into his leg and kicks straight into the base of the massive Sword King's memorial statue, completely destroying it. As if smashing the foundation weren't enough, he follows up by repeatedly punching the monument, reducing the famous sword even further into rubble. Viewers watching through BattleTube are left completely speechless. The livestream instantly explodes with likes, dislikes, and thousands of comments. The internet practically catches fire as people struggle to believe someone just destroyed the Sword King statue with nothing but his bare hands. Feeling much better after venting his anger, Seong announces that he's about to explain his stance on the Sword King's naturalization. The story briefly explains that BattleTube is Battle.net's dedicated streaming platform, where players can earn achievement points and other rewards based on things like viewers, subscribers, and overall popularity. Chong realizes this controversy is the perfect opportunity to farm those rewards, especially while using his status as the Sword King's former brother-in-law. The stream immediately attracts a massive audience, including 10,000 dislikes, while countless viewers flood the chat asking whether he really destroyed the monument himself. Watching the reactions, Seong isn't surprised in the slightest. If stirring up outrage earns rewards, then maybe Yoon Se-jin's reputation is finally useful for something. More achievement notifications continue pouring in until one particular comment catches Seong's attention. The account uses the twin sword symbol, immediately identifying it as a member of the Sword King's fan club. Seeing that emblem brings back one of the darkest memories of his previous life. Those same fanatics were ultimately responsible for Yoon Se-'s death. At first, they had supported her more than anyone else, but over time, admiration twisted into hatred. They convinced themselves that the Sword King abandoned Korea because of his own daughter's supposed sins. Eventually, they began claiming that Yoon Se had to die if they ever wanted the Sword King to return. In the end, they actually murdered her. Remembering that tragedy, Song quietly decides that if those people need someone to direct their hatred toward this time, then he'll gladly become their target instead. Looking directly into the camera, he tells everyone to pay close attention before punching the broken statue one last time. Then he bluntly declares that the Sword King will never be returning. The chat instantly erupts with furious insults and endless questions. Without hesitating, Seong tells everyone he's about to reveal an unedited recording of the final conversation between Ryuhei and his own daughter after he changed his nationality. The recording plays exactly as it happened. Yoon Se-jin openly admits he fell in love with another woman and abandoned everything because accepting his love was the condition she gave him. Seiya asks whether that woman was really worth leaving both his family and his country behind, and he calmly answers yes. Once the recording ends, Seiya steps forward herself. Looking straight into the camera, she admits that, as the Sword King's daughter, she's just as shocked and confused by everything as everyone else. Then she makes an announcement that leaves the audience stunned. Her father intends to leave the Sword Palace to her, but she refuses to accept anything from someone who abandoned both his family and his homeland. Instead, she declares that she will donate the entire Sword Palace building to the nation, hoping it will help support and develop future Korean players. She adds that the complete details of the donation can be discussed later. The story briefly rewinds 30 minutes earlier, when Seong first told Yoon Se about his plan to donate the Sword Palace. Naturally, she thought he had completely lost his mind. Since he didn't even seem drunk, she couldn't understand why he would suggest giving away a building worth an unimaginable fortune instead of selling it. Seong assured her he was perfectly sober, but deep down, he knew convincing her wouldn't be easy. After all, how could he possibly explain that he had already lived through this future once before? He couldn't tell her the truth, so he simply tried to persuade her. The real reason was something only he knew. After Yoon Se-jin later crushed Korea while fighting for Japan, the public's hatred toward him exploded. Eventually, the Korean government confiscated everything he owned, including the Sword Palace. With nowhere left to live, Seiya became the target of endless harassment and the Sword King's fan club, whose obsession eventually drove her to take her own life. Song had no intention of allowing history to repeat itself. If the property was destined to be taken away anyway, then he would willingly hand it over first, earning public support while protecting Seiya from becoming the center of everyone's hatred. At first, Seiya could only see the same unemployed, alcoholic uncle she had always known, so she quietly questioned whether he was really serious. When she realized he genuinely meant every word, she calmly agreed. Her answer completely surprised Seong. When he asked if she was truly okay with such a ridiculous decision, she simply replied that he had never been the type to make such a request without having a reason. More importantly, she admitted it had been a very long time since she had seen her uncle look this confident. Hearing those words left Seong completely speechless. Looking at her now in the present, he can't help thinking she really is an incredible girl. Back during the live stream, achievement notifications continue pouring in while Song silently thinks through his next move. If all of the hatred stays focused on him, then maybe those fanatics will finally leave Seiya alone. To make sure of it, he decides to provoke them even further. Looking directly into the camera, he addresses Yoon Sejin, saying that perhaps everything turned out this way for the best. Although Sejin claimed he abandoned Korea because of another woman, Seong insists that anyone who truly knew him would understand the real reason. Hearing that, Seiya immediately becomes nervous because this wasn't part of the plan they discussed. Ignoring her concern, Song continues speaking directly to his former brother-in-law, asking wherever he is whether he honestly believes nobody knows why he fled to Japan. According to Seong, Sejin ran because he lacked the confidence to continue living in Korea. That statement shocks everyone watching. He then openly warns Sejin that the moment they meet again in Japan, he'll personally bring him down. To make the declaration even more dramatic, he tears off his sleeve and throws out a direct challenge. The broadcast instantly sends both Korea and Japan into complete chaos. Later, after returning home, Seiya quietly asks whether he really needed to go that far. Song simply tells her not to worry about the public reaction and leave the chaos to him. Still, she can't shake the feeling that something about him has completely changed overnight. Jokingly, Song wonders how anyone could possibly stay the same after dying once and returning to the past. He quickly laughs it off before she can question that strange comment, asking whether he had really looked like nothing more than a washed-up alcoholic lately. Before the conversation can continue, the doorbell suddenly rings. Both of them instinctively tense up. While Seiya wonders who could possibly be visiting, Seong isn't surprised at all. In fact, he was expecting this. Calmly reassuring his niece, he tells her not to worry because it's finally time to make some money. Meanwhile, over in Tokyo, people discuss how relations between Korea and Japan are becoming even worse after the Sword King's decision to change his nationality. Everyone agrees Korea has every reason to be furious after losing its strongest player. Beside Yoon Sejin, Shizuru gently asks whether everything happening is bothering him. Sejin casually asks if she has only just woken up, and she replies that she's already had enough rest. Instead, she's more concerned about how much pressure he's carrying. Sejin then tells her she no longer needs to call him Sejin because he has chosen to live as Ryuhei now. Shizuru immediately refuses. To her, he'll always remain Sejin the Sword King and Korea's former #1 ranked player. Looking him in the eyes, she says nothing can ever change that truth before softly confessing her love and kissing him with genuine affection. Back at the Sword Palace, Song opens the front door to find exactly the person he expected waiting outside. The visitor politely greets him, surprised that Song almost seems to have predicted his arrival. With complete confidence, Song explains that after causing such a massive public incident, it was only natural for the government to send someone. He even recognizes the visitor immediately as Park Yoon-sik, a section chief. After Yoon Sejin abandoned Korea, Park had become one of the officials most heavily involved in handling everything connected to the Sword Palace. Even Seiya politely greets him before Park gets straight to the point. Although he admits Song's live stream was certainly extreme, he also says he personally liked it because it finally forced the government to reach a conclusion. They could no longer keep hoping the Sword King would return. With tensions between Korea and Japan continuing to rise, delaying the issue any longer simply wasn't possible. Seong impatiently tells him to skip the formalities and get to the point. Park finally explains that the government wishes to take control of the Sword Palace. Once that happens, the public will likely accept that the Sword King truly isn't coming back. Even Park is surprised by how accurately Seong predicted the government's response, wondering whether this confident man could really be the same unemployed gambler he remembered. However, there is one condition. The government still hasn't completely abandoned hope that Yoon Sejin might someday return. Instead of permanently confiscating the Sword Palace, they intend to place it under government trusteeship, meaning they will manage and protect the property until its rightful owners return. If that day ever comes, the ownership deed will be handed back without issue. They even plan to let Seong and Seiya continue living there during that time. Reading through the proposal, Seong has to admit it's a surprisingly reasonable compromise. He had originally intended to hand the building over for free anyway, so receiving something in return is an even better outcome. Acknowledging that he understands the government's position, Seong says he's willing to cooperate, but before signing anything, he has one favor he wants to ask. Both Park and Seiya look at him in confusion as he prepares to reveal his condition. Sometime later, another BattleTube livestream begins. The broadcaster, Golden Light Streamer, enthusiastically greets his audience and proudly welcomes everyone to the Blood and Dust Coliseum. Looking down from above the arena, he jokes that the view is much better from up there, before announcing that the famous deep-sea expert has once again arrived. He makes an overly dramatic entrance, drawing an enormous sword and striking a flashy pose that looks far cooler in his own head than it actually does. As soon as the match countdown starts, he immediately begins begging for donations, repeatedly thanking viewers while acting as over-the-top as possible. The audience isn't impressed in the slightest. The chat quickly fills with complaints, with many viewers wondering why he had come back instead of disappearing for good. Even so, everyone knows exactly who he is. Despite his handsome face and endless energy, he's infamous for being an absolute troll. He was once a promising Gold League player, but intentionally demoted himself all the way to bronze just to create content called Deep Sea Exploration, where he entertained himself by bullying weaker players instead of seriously competing. While he jokingly insists he isn't that bad, the chat immediately labels him a complete psychopath. His stats and equipment still belong to the Gold League, making every bronze match little more than a playground for him. With his usual arrogance, Golden announces that the warm-up is over and begins searching for today's first victim. That's when he spots the perfect source of content, Seong Ji-han. The chat instantly recognizes him and starts making jokes as Golden walks straight over for an interview. Completely ignoring Seong's lack of interest, he loudly introduces him as the Sword King's former brother-in-law, the strongest player currently dominating the Bronze League, and the man who recently smashed the twin sword statue, making headlines under countless different nicknames. Seong quickly realizes he's dealing with one of BattleTube's loud, attention-seeking streamers. At the same time, he remembers that he still has several BattleTube achievements he never bothered claiming in his previous life. Since he's already here, he decides he might as well start streaming too. The moment Seong goes live, Golden stands right beside him, continuing to shove the camera into his face while complaining about being ignored. Watching this unfold, the viewers are completely stunned that Seong casually started his own stream right in front of another creator. Golden, on the other hand, immediately becomes irritated. Instead of making content, he's accidentally helping Seong become even more popular. Realizing his own views might start dropping, he decides he needs to eliminate Seong as quickly as possible. Just then, a special mission suddenly appears. A user named Sword King's Love offers 2,000 GP to anyone who kills Seong Ji-han and makes sure he finishes in last place. Since 1 GP is roughly equal to $1, Golden is shocked that someone casually offered such a massive reward. He immediately suspects it came from the Sword King's fan club. Then things become even crazier. More and more viewers begin increasing the bounty. The reward climbs higher and higher while Golden watches in disbelief. It quickly reaches 31,978 GP, keeps rising toward 40,000, and he even starts hoping it will hit 50,000 before the match begins. Once all the players are finally summoned into the arena, the total stops at 42,000 GP, leaving Golden slightly disappointed. But just before the game officially starts, another member of the Sword King's fan club promises an additional 10,000 GP if Seong is actually killed. Hearing that, Golden becomes completely fired up. Dramatically thanking his viewers for their burning passion, he secretly celebrates the fact that he just tricked those obsessed fans into funding him. Turning towards Seong, he confidently declares that his game is over before it has even begun. The very next second, Golden activates Charge, a skill that launches him forward at incredible speed and rushes straight towards Seong, convinced the fight is already over. But Seong reacts instantly. Before Golden can even understand what happened, Seong lands a devastating counterattack that knocks the massive sword flying into the air. Frozen in disbelief, Golden can only stare as Seong casually comments that his weapon is sturdier than expected. It turns out the so-called weapon is nothing more than a D-rank cooking set club, and Seong is actually surprised it survived such a direct impact without breaking. Since Golden attacked first, Seong decides it's only fair to return the favor. Coating the simple kitchen utensil with divine power, he charges forward himself. In a single flash, he tears straight through the gold-ranked streamer, cutting him down instantly. Both Golden and his viewers are left completely speechless. The live stream chat immediately explodes with questions. Some viewers wonder whether they're witnessing the Sword King's level of power, while others recognize the white energy as divine power. Many outright refuse to believe someone capable of doing this belongs in the Bronze League. Just like that, Seong secures the match's first elimination, earning 10 achievement points. Looking down at the D-rank kitchen knife, still covered in sacred energy after defeating someone with gold-tier stats, Seong casually thinks that it's been a long time since he last cooked. Judging by what just happened, it looks like he just finished cooking himself a chicken. After dying, the blonde streamer suddenly finds himself drifting through a dark, empty void where every trace of light has disappeared. Still acting dramatic, he starts rambling that the darker the night becomes, the brighter the light will eventually shine. Moments later, he proudly announces his return. The reason is a resurrection cross, a one-time use item that instantly revives its owner after death. Because of how powerful it is, the item is banned from national leagues, promotion series, guild battles, and other major competitions. Thanks to that relic, he comes right back to life and immediately claims he only lost because he let his guard down. Confidently promising the viewers they'll soon watch him cut off Seong Ji-han's head, he has no idea that Seong is already standing directly behind him. The moment he notices that familiar smile, all of his confidence disappears. Before he can react, Seong kills him again, securing an effortless double kill. Looking down at the corpse, Seong casually remarks that it's been a long time since he last saw someone use a resurrection cross. In the future, players only bothered with it because of a famous exploit, rather than the death penalty itself. However, something catches his attention that matters far more than the streamer. The arena feels unusually noisy. Looking around, Seong realizes there are powerful spectators watching the match. This time, they're elves. Instantly recognizing them, he coldly refers to them as nasty little pests, remembering that they also played a major role in humanity's destruction. Even so, he decides to worry about them later. Right now, he has more immediate targets. When Seong turns back toward the battlefield, he notices every remaining player running away the instant they spot him. One of them shouts that fighting each other no longer matters because Seong is casually killing players with Gold League strength. Watching everyone scatter only makes hunting players less efficient, but Seong has another priority anyway. After obtaining the D-rank kitchen set relic, he still needs to discover its hidden activation conditions. Just then, the system issues a standard mission, Goblin Subjugation. The objective is to eliminate every goblin gathered around the Goblin Champion. Calling it a pleasant surprise, Seong immediately rushes toward the monsters. Swinging the club first before finishing them with the knife, he effortlessly cuts through the goblins one after another. As he fights, the system confirms that he's finally using the relic correctly. The kitchen set begins reacting, making Seong realize the relic follows a precise sequence. First, he must crush the target's head, then pierce its heart. Since it's an equipment set rather than a single weapon, every tool has its own proper order. Happy that he figured it out before the match ended, he still can't help wishing he had solved the puzzle earlier. There would have been far more goblins left to test it on. Fortunately, one target still remains. Standing before him is the towering Goblin Champion, a massive creature, nearly 2 meters tall. Seong briefly considers reading its lengthy status description before deciding it isn't worth the time. Instead, he charges straight in, slams the giant's face into the ground with a single blow, casually remarks that being bigger doesn't really matter, then pierces its heart to finish it off. Completing the mission earns him 500 achievement points, another point of divine power, and causes the relic to react once more. After exhausting its stored energy, the kitchen set drops from D rank to E rank. Seong quickly realizes that once its energy recovers at the lower rank, he should be able to increase his divine power again by repeating the process. Unfortunately, farming monsters is painfully slow, so with every player already fleeing, he reluctantly decides to resume hunting them instead. If they refuse to come to him, he'll simply chase them down himself. Watching him stalk the battlefield wrapped in sacred energy, even the viewers admit he no longer looks remotely holy. At this point, the only thing surrounding him is pure, murderous intent. Meanwhile, back in Yeoksam, Gangnam, Seoul, the blonde streamer has already respawned in reality and is furiously screaming at his monitor. He angrily complains that Seong attacked him out of nowhere, despite him being such a wonderful streamer. At first, he wonders whether Seong might simply be weak, before immediately correcting himself. Weak isn't even close. Desperately trying to analyze the fight, he estimates Seong's current stats at 33 strength, 37 agility, 36 vitality, and 34 magic power. Those numbers leave him completely baffled, because the Bronze League's stat cap is only 25. Even after accounting for everything Seong gained during the goblin fight, his average still sits around 35, something that should be completely impossible. The streamer starts convincing himself Seong must be hacking. Then he suddenly hears a strange squealing noise from the livestream. Turning back toward the screen, he realizes it wasn't an animal at all. Seong has begun treating players exactly like he treated the goblins, smashing their heads first before driving the blade through their hearts. Horrified, the streamer can only wonder what kind of massacre the battlefield has turned into. Seong tears through his opponents one after another, securing double kills, triple kills, quadra kills, and finally a pentakill in rapid succession. Some viewers even begin calling the slaughter a work of art, unable to understand how he eliminated 4 players in a single charge. The remaining participants finally realize fighting among themselves is suicide. They immediately begin pooling buffs, equipment, and support abilities together, deciding their only chance is to cooperate against Seong. Others simply start accusing him of hacking and demand that he be removed from the match. Their desperate resistance accomplishes nothing. Seong calmly deflects every arrow fired toward him, knocking each projectile off course before continuing the massacre. Another effortless double kill leaves only a handful of survivors alive. The E-rank kitchen set reacts once more, increasing his divine power again before degrading from E-rank to F-rank. At the same time, Seong clears the 1-0 Kill Coliseum mission, earning another 5,000 achievement points. While satisfied with the rewards, he knows they're still nowhere near enough for what he truly wants. Then, the system presents something completely unexpected, an epic mission. The objective is simple in theory, but absurd in practice. Find the Shadow Queen among the Coliseum spectators and provoke her. Seong is genuinely shocked. An epic quest appearing in the Bronze League should be impossible. Even more unbelievable is the reward: interest from the Shadow Queen constellation. Immediately, Seong recalls exactly what that means. Constellations are godlike beings connected to the stars themselves. If even one of them takes an interest in a player, it can eventually lead to sponsorship and grant powers that ordinary players could never hope to obtain. Opportunities like that normally don't exist until someone reaches at least the Diamond League, yet somehow one has appeared before him now. Realizing how valuable this chance is, Seong vows to earn the Shadow Queen's attention no matter what. Once one constellation begins watching him, others are bound to follow. The only problem is actually finding her. Since the Shadow Queen Queen is supposedly hiding somewhere among the countless elves observing the match. All Seong can do for now is carefully study every single face and guess which one might secretly be the legendary constellation. The system officially announces the results of the Colosseum match. With 10 player kills, Seong Jihan finishes in first place, becoming the first Korean player to achieve that feat since Yoon Sejin. News of the accomplishment spreads across forums and social media almost instantly. Thanks to the publicity, Seong's BattleTube channel explodes to 10,000 subscribers, while the livestream peaks at around 4,000 concurrent viewers. Ironically, even the Sword King's fan club ends up helping him grow. Their attempt to ruin Seong only backfires, and before long, all of their anger shifts toward Golden Light instead. Back in reality, the defeated streamer can only complain that the internet is full of lunatics. Since things have already reached this point, he dramatically announces that he's switching sides and becoming Seong Jihan's biggest supporter. Some viewers even joke that Golden Light has officially promoted himself to Seong Jihan's personal editor, promising to turn him into the greatest BattleTube creator ever. Naturally, nobody bothers asking Seong what he thinks about any of that. Back at home, Yoon Se-ah is just as shocked after watching the entire broadcast. She can't understand when her uncle suddenly became this powerful. Online, many viewers are accusing him of smurfing, making it look like an experienced player intentionally entered beginner matches. Seong calmly remarks that war has always been ruthless, only for Se-ah to tease him for sounding like an old man. She then explains what smurfing actually means before admitting she honestly hopes that's what's happening, because otherwise his strength would be completely absurd. Looking at his stream settings, she notices he forgot to enable donations. When she asks why, Seong casually admits he simply forgot. Since she's already helping, she suggests adding a minimum donation amount so constant notifications won't distract him during matches. Seong immediately proposes 10,000 GP, making Se-ah stare at him in disbelief. To her, setting the minimum donation at $10,000 is completely insane. While Se-ah worries about stream settings, Seong's attention remains fixed on the epic mission telling him to find the Shadow Queen. No matter how much he thinks about it, he can't imagine identifying one mysterious spectator hidden among an enormous audience. Noticing the troubled look on his face, Se-ah immediately realizes something is bothering him. She smiles and reminds him that whenever he needs help, he can always rely on her. In that moment, Seong can't help seeing her mother in her. Deciding to trust her, he finally explains the mission. All he knows is that the Shadow Queen was somewhere among the Colosseum spectators, but he has absolutely no idea who she is. Even Se-ah admits the mission sounds unbelievably strange, but after thinking for a moment, she comes up with an idea. She'll rewatch the battle replay frame by frame in slow motion and search every spectator herself. Seong wishes her luck, though he feels a little guilty about giving her such an impossible task. Finding one hidden person in that massive crowd is practically like searching for a needle in a haystack. Still, he reminds himself that Se-ah was the one who offered to help. Since he finally has some free time, Seong decides to deal with something else he had been postponing. Entering the class space, he uses the extra class slot he previously purchased with achievement points, allowing him to choose a second class. After looking through the available options, he selects Mage. The system confirms the class edition, and Seong immediately feels a completely different kind of energy flowing through his body. Unlike divine power, this new energy originates from his magical power. The real reason he chose Mage instead of another class is because possessing both support and Mage unlocks access to a unique hidden trait. As he summons a glowing purple sphere, he quietly reveals its name Force. That strange power reminds Seong of a conversation from his previous life with Baron Williams. One day, while completely drunk, the world's #1 player had started talking far more honestly than usual. Looking at Seong, Baron repeatedly muttered that everything was such a waste. Curious, Seong asked what he meant. Baron admitted that if Seong had become an American citizen earlier, he would have been recognized as a true American instead of just a useful refugee. Realizing the alcohol had loosened Baron's tongue, Seong listened carefully as the world's strongest player began revealing secrets he had never shared before. Among them was the origin of Force. At first, Seong assumed Force was simply another skill, but Baron corrected him. It wasn't a skill at all. It was a trait born from the perfect fusion of divine power and magic power. Achieving that fusion was incredibly difficult, but nobody had ever seriously attempted it because Baron was believed to be the only player capable of doing so. His unique SS rank gift granted him 2 status windows, allowing him to possess 2 classes simultaneously. When Seong asked whether that was the only requirement, Baron casually added one more condition. The player also had to reach level 10. Feeling awkward hearing such confidential information as a foreigner, Seong questioned whether Baron should really be telling him any of this. Baron simply shrugged, saying it didn't matter anymore. Since he was the only player with 2 classes, nobody else could replicate it anyway. At least, that was what Baron believed. Now, thanks to regression and the extra class slot, Seong is no longer excluded from that possibility. Determined to obtain Force immediately, Seong begins experimenting. As the unfamiliar energy starts flowing through his body, intense pain strikes him almost instantly. Even so, he refuses to stop. First, he gathers every bit of divine power into his hands before drawing magic power out from his heart and attempting to merge the two together. He desperately tries to stabilize the fusion without allowing either energy to escape. For one brief moment, he thinks he succeeds, then everything explodes. The violent backlash launches him across the room, slamming him into the door as unbearable pain tears through his body. The attempt has failed. Realizing brute force alone won't control two completely different energies, Seong wonders if his magical power is simply too low. After only one attempt, most of it is already exhausted. He also questions whether forcing both powers into his hands ever made sense in the first place. Then, another possibility occurs to him. Instead of releasing both energies first, what if he keeps them inside his body? Following that idea, he guides divine power from the upper elixir field and magic power from the middle elixir field, intending to let them clash while avoiding the lower elixir field, where martial power resides. In theory, none of the three energies would be wasted. If all three could eventually coexist, the result would be unimaginable. The moment he tries, agonizing pain tears through every part of his body. The system immediately announces that he is attempting the union of the three elixir fields, something no player should be capable of enduring. Warning after warning appears as the system detects a life-threatening condition. Unknown to Seong, Seiya hears nothing because she's wearing headphones while searching through the replay. Only later does she notice a faint scream coming from his room. Panicked, she rushes over and throws the door open. What she finds leaves her speechless. By then, Seong has somehow stabilized himself. When she asks whether the screams came from a terrible headache, he quietly admits they did. Confused, she demands to know how the pain vanished so suddenly. Seong awkwardly brushes it off as one of the mysteries of the human body, earning an angry response before Seiya immediately apologizes. She wasn't actually mad. She was simply terrified something terrible had happened to him. Only then does Seong realize he never once considered how worried she would become. Genuinely apologizing, he assures her he's fine. Seiya wipes away her tears, lightly punches him in the chest, and says she's just relieved he's safe before returning to her search for the Shadow Queen. Watching her leave, Seong silently promises himself never to let her see him in such a vulnerable state again. Although the three elixir field union clearly failed, Seong quickly realizes it wasn't a complete loss. Picking up a towel, he twists it using nothing but his newly created energy. The experiment proves something incredible. While the full fusion failed, divine power and magic power successfully merged into a brand new unique stat known as strength. Even more surprising, the temporary connection between all three elixir fields never completely disappeared. The system confirms that a faint link still remains active. As a result, martial power and strength now interact with one another, automatically sharing growth. If one stat increases, the other rises alongside it. Curious, Seong immediately raises his martial power to 14, only to watch strength increase at the exact same time. Seeing the interaction work exactly as described, Seong can't help grinning. The mechanic is unbelievably overpowered. If merely linking two of the three powers produces results like this, he can only imagine how monstrous he would become if he ever successfully fused all three elixir fields together. For now, however, he wisely abandons that idea. Attempting it again at his current level would probably kill him. Since he already gained part of what he wanted, he decides to test his new mage abilities instead. Stretching out his hand, he tries casting a simple fire spell, only for the system to inform him that he doesn't have enough magical power yet. Looking down at the tiny flame flickering above his fingers, barely stronger than a cigarette lighter, Seong can only sigh and admit, it's actually kind of cute. The next morning, Seong wakes as the sunlight shines across his face. Opening his status window, he immediately notices that his divine power has reached 10. Along with the increase comes a new restriction from the system. From now on, he can only absorb divine power from C-rank relics or higher, meaning every D-rank and E-rank relic lying around him has officially become useless. He had secretly hoped they would still work, but the system isn't that generous. Grumbling that it's unbelievably stingy, Seong complains that he spent his own hard-earned achievement points buying all those relics, only for them to become obsolete overnight. Since they're no longer useful to him, he decides he might as well sell the second-hand relics on the market and recover some of the investment. After that, he checks on Yoon Seiya, wondering if she's still asleep. Instead, she appears already awake, looking like a complete zombie from exhaustion. Seong immediately asks why she looks so terrible and warns her not to tell him she stayed up all night. Sheepishly, Seiya admits that's exactly what happened. She became so focused on researching that she completely lost track of time until morning arrived. Seong gently tells her she doesn't need to push herself so hard, but she insists the effort was worth it because she actually found something useful. Curious, he asks whether it's information about the different races. Seiya nods, explaining that players with appraisal-type gifts often create analysis videos about other races. That answer makes Seong slightly uneasy. He can't help wondering whether people are really using their rare abilities just to make content. Rather than explaining further, Seiya simply tells him to watch the replay she found. The video shows a dark elf sitting majestically on a throne, while an overly enthusiastic narrator endlessly praises the superiority of elves. Before the commentary can continue, Seong immediately mutes the video, complaining that the narrator's voice is way too creepy. Ignoring that, Seiya points out that both elves shown seem extremely high-ranked. Since one of them is specifically a dark elf, she wonders whether someone with such a queen-like appearance could actually be the mysterious Shadow Queen mentioned in his epic mission. Seong admits the theory makes sense and praises her for making such a good observation. Even so, Seiya remains cautious, saying it's still far too early to jump to conclusions and that she plans to keep searching. Internally, Seong agrees. If finding the Shadow Queen were that easy, a being tied to the constellations would have been discovered long ago. Seiya then says she'll start looking through overseas videos the next day as well. Hearing how seriously she's taking the investigation, Seong jokes that she already sounds like a professional researcher. Smiling proudly, Seiya says she could even edit his BattleTube videos if he wanted, because she already knows video editing. Surprised, Seong asks when she learned something like that. She casually explains that she isn't an expert, but she used to edit her father's videos as a hobby. That innocent answer leaves Seong speechless. The thought of Yoon Sejin immediately resurfaces, and once again he can't understand how someone could abandon a daughter like Seiya after everything she had done for him. In his mind, he quietly curses Sejin for being completely pathetic. His thoughts then drift back to a conversation from 2 days earlier with Section Chief Park Yoon-sik. During that meeting, Park revealed that the administration believed they had finally identified the woman responsible for Yoon Sejin's sudden change. When Seong asked who she was, Park answered with one name: Ito Shizuru. According to the government's investigation, she possesses an S-rank gift known as beauty. The revelation shocked everyone present. Seong immediately wondered whether Sejin had actually fallen in love with Shizuru herself, or whether he had fallen victim to the ability tied to her gift. Park admitted that the administration was beginning to believe it was the latter. As unbelievable as it sounded, it was the only explanation that fit the evidence. He also warned Seong not to underestimate that gift. Beauty supposedly goes far beyond simple charm or mind control. It may even be capable of fundamentally reshaping a person's thoughts and emotions. There had already been several suspicious cases of talented players suddenly abandoning their own countries before relocating to Japan. If beauty truly has no range limitation, then no one can predict when Japan might use it to quietly steal another nation's strongest players. After hearing all of that, Seong searched for information about both Ito Shizuru and the beauty gift, only to find absolutely nothing. He quickly realizes Japan is probably suppressing every piece of information that could expose the truth. Since there isn't any concrete evidence yet, there isn't much he can do for now. Still, he decides to take Park Yoon-sik's warning seriously. If the government's suspicions are correct, then Japan may have already started making its move, and Seong intends to prepare before it's too late. Just as Section Chief Park's warning is still fresh in Seong's mind, a highly suspicious aircraft carrying cargo under the name of Japan's Neo Self-Defense Force lands in South Korea. Around the same time, Yoon Seiya asks her uncle how much longer they'll be, because they'll be late if they don't leave soon. Seong calmly tells her everything is ready, before saying it's time to go and welcome their guests. Together, they head toward the 32nd floor. During the elevator ride, Seong notices Seiya looking nervous and tells her to relax. She quietly admits she's shaking because this is her first major public appearance since everything involving her father happened. Seong reassures her that all they need to do is remain as confident as they were during their previous interview. As long as they don't make any mistakes, they have nothing to fear. Seiya nods and quietly agrees. Once they reach the ground floor, Seong reminds her that most of the people waiting outside have already decided what they want to believe before they even hear anyone speak. Moments later, an official greets them, saying everyone has been waiting and confirming that everything Seong requested has already been prepared. Seong thanks him and confidently says he'll handle the rest himself. While walking inside, Seong speaks with Park Yoon-sik, who admits he was initially confused after receiving Seong's unusual request. Holding an auction for the Sword King's personal collection seemed like a strange decision at first, but now he believes he finally understands the plan. Park asks whether the real purpose is to lure in the Japanese delegation, especially since the Neo Self-Defense Force has its own reserved table at the event. Seong confirms that's exactly the reason. The items selected for the auction weren't chosen randomly. Among them are Yoon Sejin's battle connector and his complete battle records, both of which are perfect bait because Japan would undoubtedly want to obtain every detail of Sejin's combat history. Seong explains that depending on who arrives to purchase those items, they may also reveal far more than they intended. Whether Yoon Sejin personally appears or not, Korea has to accept reality and use this opportunity to move forward instead of endlessly waiting for someone who already left. Listening to him, Park once again realizes how unusually far ahead Seong always thinks. Before they continue, Seong reminds Park that this is their final chance to shape public opinion, and asks him to have the reporters carefully watch the Neo Self-Defense Force's table throughout the auction. Before they can enter the venue, another interruption appears. A woman suddenly calls out, saying she only needs a minute because they're family. Seiya immediately recognizes the couple as her uncle and aunt. Her aunt anxiously asks whether she's really okay with holding this auction. Even if she desperately needs money, does she truly have to sell everything? Then the woman's attention immediately shifts toward Seong. Calling him a scumbag, she accuses him of manipulating Seiya into making these decisions, and angrily demands to know how he dares sell property that doesn't belong to him. Seong instantly takes offense, asking exactly who she's calling a scumbag. Before the argument can escalate further, Sia steps in herself. She reminds them that she clearly remembers how they once used her father's name to run scams until they were eventually caught. According to her, they've already looked down on her enough. She knows exactly why they came today. They only want to seize what remains of her father's fortune. Her aunt angrily denies the accusation and questions how Sia could dare speak to her that way. Without hesitating, Sia calmly states that everything left behind by her father legally belongs to her, and that woman has absolutely no right to interfere. She then orders security to remove them, declaring that they are no longer her family. As security drags the furious couple away, Sia simply tells her uncle it's time to leave. Watching the entire confrontation, Seong can't help smiling as he tells her she handled everything perfectly. Proudly, Sia replies that whenever she decides to do something, she always does it properly. Just then, Park informs them that it's time. Together, Seong and Sia step onto the stage. The instant they appear, cameras begin flashing non-stop as reporters bombard them with questions. They immediately ask why this auction is being held and why foreign countries have been allowed to participate. Others question whether Sia was pressured into donating the Sword Palace or organizing the auction at all. Some even ask if they've completely given up on the Sword King's return, and what Sia thinks about people treating his belongings like easy money. Before long, attention shifts towards Seong, with reporters asking for comments about his recent BattleNet victories. Instead of answering, Seong simply raises his hand. Activating his power, he instantly shatters every camera positioned directly in front of him. The reporters panic as shattered equipment crashes to the floor, but Seong completely ignores the chaos. Calmly, he reminds everyone that this is an auction, not a press conference, and orders the room to remain silent. With everyone's attention finally focused on him, Seong begins introducing the 3 auction items. The first consists of Yoon Se-jin's battle connector, the complete battle records he used with it, his own personal combat analysis, and additional analysis compiled by many of the strongest players from both South Korea and the East Asia League. The announcement immediately causes an uproar. Information of that level is priceless, especially with tensions between Korea and Japan continuing to rise. Seong points out that analysis from players of this caliber simply cannot be obtained anywhere else. Before he can continue, 2 members of the Japanese delegation stand up. The older man introduces himself as Takeda Kazuo, the recruitment team manager of the Neo Self-Defense Force. Since the auction has officially begun, he immediately makes his first offer 5 billion yen for everything. On top of that, he requests a private meeting with both Seong Jihan and Yoon Se-jin. Seong already knows exactly where this conversation is heading. Politely apologizing, he immediately refuses. If Takeda has something to say, he can say it publicly, because there will be no private meeting today. Out of every country present, Japan should understand that better than anyone. Takeda responds with a cold smile, reminding Seong that he's merely a guest and shouldn't be treated so disrespectfully. His smile slowly grows wider as he subtly warns that if Seong continues behaving this way, someone might be forced to intervene. At that exact moment, a young woman silently steps forward and places her sword against Seong's chest. Takeda calmly explains that she's his shadow bodyguard. While she may not be as powerful as the Sword King himself, she's still an outstanding player. Even with a blade pressed against him, Seong doesn't flinch for a second. As Takeda continues speaking with fake politeness, Seong activates sacred power in his eyes and stares directly at the mysterious bodyguard. Looking at her face, he quietly remarks that she resembles Yoon Se-jin far more than she should. Instead of calming him down, that resemblance only makes his anger toward his former brother-in-law burn even hotter. In the very next instant, the shadow bodyguard moves. Before her attack can fully unfold, Seong reacts first, driving a devastating punch straight into her chin. Completely overwhelmed, she stumbles backward, instantly realizing she made a fatal mistake. After knocking the shadow bodyguard backward with a single punch, Seong calmly asks whether she still wants to continue. He slowly raises his hand above her head, and for the first time, genuine fear appears on her face. Without even needing to attack again, he quietly tells her to stop because she's already done everything she could. Then he reminds everyone of something important. This entire auction is being broadcast live worldwide through BattleTube. The whole world is watching in real time, so does she really intend to draw her sword in front of millions of viewers? Hearing that, Takeda Kazuo immediately changes his attitude. Acting completely innocent, he insists there was never any intention of allowing violence. According to him, his bodyguard simply acted on her own and went too far, so he politely apologizes on her behalf. Before anyone else can respond, however, Takeda says there's one more important detail to add. His offer of $50 million also includes a private meeting. Then, instead of addressing Seong, he deliberately shifts all attention toward Yoon Se-ah. Since she's the Sword King's daughter and rightful heir, Takeda says the decision should belong to her instead. Seong quietly admits that part is technically true. Walking right past Seong, Takeda tells Seiya that she's the real beneficiary of today's auction. The invitation isn't for Seong at all, it's for her. Then he asks the one question designed to shake her resolve. Isn't she curious about how her father is doing? He promises she can ask anything she wants, because there are surely many things only he can answer. Confident that no reasonable person would reject such an opportunity, Takeda waits for her response. To everyone's surprise, Seiya refuses immediately. Even Takeda is visibly caught off guard. He hurriedly asks whether she truly understands what she's rejecting. This is $50 million. Calmly, Seiya admits it's an incredibly tempting offer, just like her uncle said. However, if the only way to hear about her father is by making a deal, then she doesn't want to hear anything at all. She also reminds everyone that she's still a minor, while Seong Ji-han is her legal guardian, so she'll follow his decision. Her answer eases the concerns of many people watching, who had worried she might end up being taken to Japan. Even so, others quickly realize they still can't relax. Nothing prevents the Neo Self-Defense Force from simply winning the auction with money alone. Among the audience, one intimidating man, who looks more like an Italian mob boss than an official, is left speechless by Seiya's refusal. Taking advantage of the moment, Takeda calmly announces that the Neo Self-Defense Force will simply purchase everything for $50 million anyway. Confused murmurs spread across the room until he explains that the private meeting was never officially part of the auction. It was merely a personal bonus, he added himself. The real offer was always $50 million. Realizing he had been manipulated from the very beginning, Song's anger immediately flares up. Takeda casually reveals that Yoon Se-jin himself ordered him to bring those $50 million. To prove it, he presents the payment card before also producing a personal letter addressed to Yoon Se-ah from the Sword King. In his eyes, the auction is already finished. The moment Seiya looks at the envelope, she notices something that stings even more than the money. Her father's signature no longer reads Yoon Se-jin. It now bears his new name, Ito Ryuhei. Takeda quietly comments on how surprisingly easy it was to obtain all of the Sword King's belongings, even wondering aloud whether anyone on Baron Williams's Korean side could have matched an offer that large. Everyone listening silently curses him in their heads as he casually remarks that the auction ended much faster than expected. Although Seong is furious, Takeda continues speaking. Before returning to Japan, he mentions that the United States government once banned the head of Japan's new defense recruitment division from entering the country because he was simply too successful at recruiting talented foreign players. Eventually, people began calling him the Japanese calamity. He then politely asks Seong to sign the necessary paperwork as soon as possible. While agreeing for the moment, Seong silently notes that there's a real possibility Takeda is connected to Ito Shizuru, making him someone who deserves very careful attention. Meanwhile, the atmosphere throughout the venue turns increasingly uncomfortable. The auction ended so quickly that many spectators begin questioning whether the entire event was staged from the beginning. If Japan was always going to pay $50 million immediately, then why invite every other country at all? Realizing public opinion is starting to turn against them, Seong knows they desperately need something to shift the narrative. Before he can think of a solution, Sia opens her father's letter. Reading it aloud, she reveals its contents. Se-jin says he heard about her decision to donate the Sword Palace, calling it a terrible choice without even asking for her reasons. He explains that this money will be the last inheritance he ever gives her and hopes she spends it wisely because, from this point forward, their relationship as father and daughter is officially over. She should never expect anything else from him again. After finishing the letter, Seiya quietly confirms that it's undeniably her father's handwriting. Listening to every word, Seong's rage only grows stronger. Remembering everything Section Chief Park told him about beauty, he begins wondering whether the gift truly goes beyond ordinary mind control. Maybe it doesn't simply manipulate people, it completely rewrites who they are. In the past, Se-jin had genuinely been a caring and dependable father to Seiya. Watching him now personally drive the final nail into their relationship feels absolutely unforgivable. Remaining calm, Seiya asks Takeda to deliver one final message back to Ito Ryuhei. She says she received his last inheritance without any problems and is more than happy to cut all remaining ties with him. She also remarks that tearing up the letter would only create extra work for the cleaning staff. Before she can do anything else, Seong quietly tells her not to worry. Using his power, he pulls the letter directly into his own hand before igniting it with fire until nothing remains but ashes. Everyone watching is completely stunned. Moments ago, they believed Song was a support-type player, yet now they're watching him manipulate divine power, fight like a warrior, and casually use magic as well. Even Takeda can't hide his interest anymore. Staring directly at Seong, he quietly decides that Japan absolutely has to recruit this man somehow. The moment the event begins settling down, representatives from various organizations immediately rush towards Song, asking whether he's already joined a guild and promising to offer whatever he wants if he'll simply consider them. Seong raises his hand, telling everyone to calm down because having the entire crowd charge him at once is becoming a problem. Just then, Seiya quietly walks over to him. Thinking she's tired, Seong apologizes and asks if she can head home first while he deals with everyone here. Instead, she suddenly says something feels wrong. Her head begins hurting, the pain rapidly worsens, and she suddenly collapses right in front of him. Completely panicked, Seong immediately catches her before she can hit the ground, desperately calling her name and begging her to wake up. After a tense moment, Seiya slowly opens her eyes. Song frantically asks whether she's alright, and tells her they'll take her straight to the hospital. Instead, she quietly admits she was only pretending. She noticed how trapped he was by the crowd and decided to fake collapsing so everyone would back off. Looking at him with a mischievous smile, she asks whether she did a good job. Relieved beyond words, Seong laughs and tells her she's just like her mother, quickly correcting himself after accidentally saying sister instead. With that, he announces that today's event is officially over because his niece isn't feeling well and needs to rest. Asking whether she can still walk, Seiya says all she wants to do is go home and sleep. Just before they leave, Takeda Kazuo calls out to Seong one final time, politely apologizing if his presence caused any inconvenience. He says he'd like to invite Seong to a formal meeting so they can become better acquainted, then hands over his business card. Without saying a word, Seong uses his power to pull the card into his hand. Looking directly at Takeda, he quietly calls the invitation a joke. Then he tears the card cleanly in half before letting the shredded pieces fall right in front of the Japanese recruiter. That silent act of destruction is his entire answer. Everyone watching is left speechless. The elite recruiter, representing one of the world's most influential organizations, had just been publicly rejected by a Bronze League player from Korea. Meanwhile, Takeda is strangely thrilled by everything that just happened. Instead of feeling insulted, he thinks the protagonist is even more incredible now. He even calls Seong's ability an unknown power capable of destroying a business card from that far away. To him, that ability alone makes Seong unbelievably valuable. The more he thinks about it, the more convinced he becomes that Seong is no ordinary bronze player. He's a rising star with limitless potential, and Takeda wants to recruit him more than ever, no matter what it takes. At the same time, Seong and Seiya are feeling pretty satisfied with how they handled the situation. Seiya proudly says she acted perfectly because Takeda fell for her performance immediately. When she playfully asks whether he's ever seen her do anything wrong, Seong immediately brings up her cooking. That completely shuts her down. Right then, Seong notices an unread system message. Opening it, he sees that someone named Stalker Chan donated 10,000 GP, writing that it was nice meeting him. He's shocked the donation came through even while his stream was offline. What bothers Seiya even more is how creepy the message sounds. Seong can only wonder why his very first donation had to come from someone like that before deciding he'll just block him. Just then, Lee Haeyeon walks over with Lim Gaeyong, calling out to both Seong and Seiya. The two groups stare at each other for a moment in slight confusion, before Haeyeon politely introduces herself as the director of the 3rd PR division of the Twin Stars Guild. She apologizes for suddenly approaching them and explains that she really wanted to meet them in person. Seong immediately realizes something is off, because normal people shouldn't even be able to get inside this area. Asking how she managed it, he also notices her voice sounds strangely familiar. Haeyeon casually explains that she has good connections within the Korean BattleNet administration, and simply used those relationships to get in. She even proudly says she's famous in the guild for knowing everybody. Hearing that confidence and her voice together suddenly stirs an old memory. When she casually brings up his old match predictions, everything finally clicks. Seong realizes she's someone he knew in his previous life, the woman who once told him she'd always been one of his biggest fans. Seeing him stare in surprise, Seiya asks what's wrong, while Haeyeon jokingly wonders whether her beauty broke his brain. Instead of answering directly, Seong quotes Dostoevsky, saying that when the world is full of possibilities, it's hard to give them up, adding that the famous novelist was also addicted to gambling. The quote catches both girls completely off guard. Before anyone can respond, Lim Gaeyong immediately steps in front of Haeyeon and demands to know how Seong knows Haeyeon's personal motto. Only a handful of people know about her gambling problem, so how could a complete stranger possibly know that quote? At that moment, Seong becomes certain of her identity. He remembers her as Zero, the first Korean manager in the American Guild. Despite struggling with alcohol and gambling, her voice gift eventually evolved far beyond simply increasing experience. After the tutorial, it became capable of boosting stats, gifts, and almost everything else, allowing her to become the reserve team's guild master. Remembering all that, Seong casually asks whether she's still visiting casinos. The question instantly hits a nerve. Haeyeon awkwardly tells Lim Gaeyong to stop him before he keeps talking. Looking at both Zero and the Plum Blossom Sword, Seong quietly thinks the Twin Stars Guild really gathered some impressive talent. He then explains that he only recognized her because he met her through one of his earliest live streams, and one of her comments had stayed in his memory ever since. He apologizes if he startled her because he only wanted to confirm his suspicion. Hearing that, Lim Gaeyong immediately asks if Haeyeon was seriously chatting in livestream comments. Haeyeon's face turns bright red as she desperately tells her to shut up. Trying to recover her dignity, she complains that being remembered as a gambling addict isn't exactly flattering. Seong immediately corrects her, bluntly pointing out she isn't just remembered as one, she actually is one. Standing beside him, Seiya notices something she hasn't seen in a long time. Her uncle actually smiled. Watching the interaction, she immediately starts wondering if he likes Haeyeon. Trying to regain control of the conversation, Haeyeon says that starting things off in a relaxed atmosphere isn't bad, and, strangely enough, it feels like they've already met countless times before. Standing nearby, Seiya secretly gets excited and quietly grabs her phone, becoming completely convinced this woman likes her uncle. Finally getting to the real topic, Haeyeon brings up the Twin Stars Guild and asks if Seong would be willing to meet somewhere later to discuss recruitment. Seiya's imagination immediately goes wild, making her wonder if this is what gaining an aunt feels like. Meanwhile, Haeyeon confidently congratulates herself internally, convinced she looked incredibly charming just now, even telling Lim Gaeyong to pay attention and learn how someone with experience handles men. Lim Gaeyong couldn't care less. Just as Haeyeon expects everything to go smoothly, Song apologizes and says he doesn't remember his phone number. Both women freeze on the spot. He even turns towards Seiya and asks whether she remembers it. Watching the scene unfold, Seiya can only think that's the worst excuse she's ever heard. At first, she assumes he's deliberately playing hard to get, but then she realizes he's completely serious. He genuinely can't remember his own Korean phone number. Deciding to help him escape the awkward situation, she suddenly pretends to feel dizzy again. Unfortunately, their teamwork completely falls apart because Seong misunderstands everything and honestly thinks she needs to go home and rest. Telling everyone his niece still isn't feeling well, he says they'll leave first. Before walking away, he asks Haeyeon to simply give him her business card instead, promising he'll contact her later. Still too stunned to react, she silently hands it over. As Song and Seiya leave together, Seiya happily thinks she doesn't have to worry about her uncle's love life anymore, while Song remains completely clueless about what just happened. The moment they're gone, Lim Gaeyong can no longer hold it in and bursts into laughter. Haeyeon tells her to just laugh if she's going to laugh anyway, and Lim immediately starts teasing her non-stop while Haeyeon complains that Seong is unbelievably clueless. Later, while walking home, Seiya suddenly asks her uncle whether he even knows what being unexpected means. She says she never imagined he'd use something her father used to do. Completely misunderstanding her, Seong comments that she's getting older, her clothes are getting shorter, and that they still look good on her. Seiya quickly tells him that's not what she meant. She was talking about the rejection line he used earlier. Who still uses the excuse of forgetting their own phone number? Replaying the entire conversation in her head, she says acting hard to get was one thing, but pretending not to know his own number was just sad. She proudly claims the only reason everything worked out was because she stepped in to save him. Seong insists once again that he honestly doesn't remember his Korean number. This time, she isn't sure whether to believe him anymore, so she seriously asks if he's telling the truth. When he calmly answers yes, the atmosphere instantly becomes awkward. Slowly lowering her hand, she jokingly says he's starting to show signs of Alzheimer's, while Seong can only sigh to himself, thinking that's definitely not what's happening. After that painfully awkward encounter, Seong returns to Bronze League Gangnam for another match. This time, the mission is defense. The objective is simple: protect the crystal while surviving waves of zombies. Even before the battle begins, Seong admits he's exhausted. Between everything that happened at the auction and trying to calm Seiya, he's completely worn out. Unfortunately, Seiya suddenly breaks down crying, blaming herself for ruining her uncle's future love life. Through tears, she says she messed everything up and calls herself an idiot. Seong can only ask if she seriously believed he liked Lee Haeyeon. Why would he suddenly fall for someone addicted to gambling? Even so, meeting Zero again was something he never expected, and the thought pulls him back to memories from his previous life. Back then, after both of them had quickly lost their home countries, Seong and Zero naturally became friends. During their free time, the two constantly drank together and wasted money gambling. Zero, in particular, was completely addicted to betting. One day, while the two of them were drinking and watching a match, she started yelling at Seong, asking how someone as useless as Jihan could possibly win. Song calmly reminded her that he had already predicted Diego Massid would win. Furious after losing another bet, Zero complained that an ancient gift called the God of Football had no business being that overpowered. Song simply told her to stop paying attention to the ridiculous name and look at its rank. Instead, it was SS rank. Zero stubbornly insisted she'd win the next bet, prompting Seong to tell her to stop gambling altogether. She immediately cut him off with her favorite quote: "When the world is full of possibilities, it's hard to let any of them go." Then she got annoyed, because Song always repeated that line whenever she lost. Curious, he once asked if she ever planned on removing the mask she always wore. She refused, saying that, just like Seong once told her, it was the price she paid for making a deal with the devil. Looking back now, Seong realizes becoming naturalized wasn't the only thing they had in common. Later, Zero quietly asked why Seong had become so unbelievably strong. She admitted that if he had possessed that strength while Korea still existed, maybe his friend wouldn't have died. She stopped herself there because she carried the same guilt. To Seong, that was what truly connected them. Both of them were crushed by regret, hatred, and the pain of failing to protect the people they cared about most. In the end, they both wore the exact same bitter expression. That was the relationship they shared in his previous life. Meanwhile, back in the present, Seong's live stream chat suddenly explodes with activity. A gigantic sword appears in his hands, immediately making one viewer joke that the weapon is so massive it looks like it's about to stab through the screen. The weapon is the Execution Greatsword of Priest Urk, a C-rank relic. Seong admits he wondered why a C-rank relic was being sold so cheaply, but now he understands the reason. The sword is simply too enormous and too heavy for an ordinary player to wield. For him, however, it's perfect. He casually begins swinging the massive blade around as though it weighs nothing. Watching the broadcast, viewers can't believe someone who supposedly chose support and mage is handling a weapon like that so effortlessly. Many immediately start claiming his strength has to be at least Gold League level before flooding the chat with requests for a status reveal. Looking at the non-stop messages, Song wonders if he should finally show his status window. Instead, he slams the greatsword into the ground and comments that more and more people keep showing up asking for things. Since his channel has already reached roughly 12,000 subscribers, he admits he probably can't keep avoiding the topic forever. Finally introducing himself properly as Song Jihan, he tells everyone he'll reveal his status window once the channel reaches 200,000 subscribers. The viewers immediately complain because that goal feels impossibly far away. Smirking, Seong adds another condition. If he loses even a single match before then, he'll reveal his status immediately. Satisfied with that compromise, he quietly thinks his viewers really aren't that hard to deal with. Just then, the rest of his teammates begin spawning into the match. As Song picks up the giant sword, he immediately freezes in confusion. Out of all the possible teammates, the system somehow matched him with the exact same mage he killed multiple times before, the overly enthusiastic, blonde streamer who now practically worships him, and one more player he never expected to see. The last man casually stands there juggling a soccer ball. Seong can't help wondering what someone like that is even supposed to do in a zombie defense mission. Kick soccer balls at the undead? The blonde streamer is absolutely thrilled, happily declaring that fate has brought him together with Seong Jihan once again. Meanwhile, the unlucky mage looks terrified after realizing he's been placed on Seong's team for a second time. His attention, however, quickly shifts to the final teammate. The man juggling the ball is none other than Diego Macide. Before the regression, Diego was Argentina's #1 player. Even so, Seong remembers him as someone who never seemed particularly special back then. He has a solid build, though his rough beard doesn't exactly improve his appearance. Still, something feels completely wrong. If Seong himself is the support, the blonde streamer is listed as the warrior, and the frightened player is still the mage, then Diego's class doesn't make any sense. Before the regression, Diego had definitely been a mage. Realizing that detail no longer matches the future, he remembers, Seong can only wonder, what the hell is going on? The mage can't believe he's been matched with Seong Jihan again. Just seeing him brings back the memory of losing one of his precious skills because of Seong, and he's still furious enough that he doesn't even want to look at him. At the same time, an access request suddenly appears from the Sword King's fan club. Confused, he wonders why something like that popped up and what kind of weirdo would send it. Curious, he opens it and immediately understands what's happening. A special mission appears. Destroy the crystal and stop Seong Jihan from finishing in first place. The reward is already 50,000 GP, meaning someone desperately wants Seong to lose. Just then, the match officially begins. Diego Macide immediately kicks his soccer ball straight into a zombie's face. Somehow, the ball deals real damage, nearly knocking the monster over before bouncing right back. Diego effortlessly traps it on his chest and turns towards Seong, asking for a buff because he needs more power. Saying teamwork only works if everyone does their part, he waits while Seong wonders whether his support skills will finally work properly. In the past, his weak stats prevented him from using buffs effectively, but now both his divine power and strength have increased. Deciding to test it, he casts Energize on the entire team. The buff successfully reaches all 3 teammates. The blonde streamer immediately lights up, amazed that Seong really is a support after all. Even the mage can't believe the same guy he hates just buffed him. Seong then calmly asks whether he's finally planning to fight properly this time. The mage immediately agrees, knowing full well that refusing would probably get him killed again. Curious, the blonde asks if something happened between the two of them, wondering whether they're actually friends. The mage internally thinks the exact opposite, but wisely decides to keep quiet. Seong simply tells the 3 of them to defend the upper level while he heads down alone. All of them stare at him in disbelief. Diego wonders if he's insane, while the mage bluntly answers that it's obvious. Complaining that he isn't Seong's subordinate, he almost argues before deciding it's better to just leave him alone. Instead, he plans to watch how long Seong can keep showing off, especially since the bounty to ruin him has already climbed to 51,800 GP. Without another word, Seong jumps directly into the middle of the zombie horde. Still falling through the air, he unleashes fire magic, blasting blue flames into the crowd before even touching the ground. Since his magic power merged into force, and divine power can now be mixed into it, the flames have become far deadlier than before. To him, the zombies are nothing more than rag dolls waiting to be burned away. The explosion tears through the horde, and before the smoke even settles, Seong grips the execution greatsword of Priest Urk with both hands and crashes into the ground. The massive blade slams down with incredible force, releasing a shockwave that launches zombies in every direction. Watching from above, Diego can't help admitting that this Korean bronze support is ridiculously powerful. The blonde excitedly asks whether the viewers are seeing all of this, because the entire battle is being streamed live. As fresh waves of zombies continue charging in, Seong calmly studies the battlefield while the chat keeps asking where this absolute monster came from. Suddenly, a red zombie sprints toward him before freezing in place without warning. Seeing that, Seong smiles. Just as he expected, earning this power was difficult, but completely worth it. Every zombie around him suddenly stops moving. This is the true value of force-space control. control, or absolute dominion. Inside the area he controls, nobody can move freely. Every action is restricted, turning every zombie within range into an effortless target. While most players would struggle to understand such overwhelming control, Seong is already used to it. During his previous life, he sparred countless times with Baron Williams, whose raw strength far exceeded his own control over force. Fighting Baron repeatedly allowed Seong to understand exactly how the ability worked. Pulling the great sword from the ground, he coats the blade in holy fire. His goal isn't simply to become stronger, he's aiming to become an absolute existence capable of wielding divine power, magic, and martial strength together. Against Bronze League monsters, nothing here can stop him. A single swing tears through the zombie pack, instantly cutting down dozens at once. His personal kill count jumps to 124, and seeing that number reminds him of the mission he failed to complete before. This time, he'll personally kill 1,000 zombies by himself and claim the 3,000 achievement point reward. Determined not to waste another second, Seong accelerates. His speed keeps increasing until he becomes little more than a blur tearing across the battlefield. Zombies fall one after another, while everyone watching from above can only stare in disbelief. Even Diego is genuinely impressed, and the viewers begin saying there's no way Seong will lose first place now. The blonde streamer, meanwhile, becomes even more desperate to see Seong's hidden status window. That conversation gives the mage an idea. A nasty grin slowly spreads across his face as he decides to cause trouble instead. The blonde notices him acting strangely, and casually points out that everyone is watching him now. Ignoring the warning, the mage quietly begins gathering fire magic beside the crystal, leaving both the viewers and his teammates wondering what exactly he's doing. Then he suddenly shouts towards Seong, hurling insults across the battlefield. Even from deep within the zombie horde, Seong hears every single word. The mage mocks him for becoming the center of attention, and sarcastically says he's even managed to charm his own niece. Then he crosses a line he should never have touched. He loudly asks when Seong supposedly manipulated Sia enough to make her obsess over him, even suggesting Seong was controlling her mind to force her obedience. Surrounded by zombies, Seong suddenly stops moving. He doesn't answer. Instead, something inside him quietly changes. The system reveals that Kim Gyu-hyuk has already earned 55,000 GP from viewers supporting his mission against Seong. That massive reward has given the idiot far more confidence than he deserves, so he continues screaming insults without realizing what he's done. Listening quietly, Seong concludes there are only two possible explanations. Either someone deliberately encouraged him, or the reward simply made him reckless. Either way, Kim Gyu-hyuk is nothing more than a nuisance trying to provoke him before running away behind his growing popularity. Normally, Seong wouldn't care about simple trash talk, but this time, Kim wasn't insulting him, he was insulting Seiya. Ever since returning to the past and seeing Seiya alive again, Seong hasn't been able to erase the memories of his previous life. The one memory he can never forget is holding her dying body in his arms after the Sword King's fan club carried out its terrorist attack. Her face had been wrapped in bandages, her body was growing cold, and no matter how desperately he begged her to wake up, he couldn't save her. That helpless feeling still haunts him. He already swore that this time no one would ever hurt Seiya again. Anyone who dared target her would pay the price. Everyone watching can instantly tell something about Seong has changed. After attempting to fuse the 3 elixir fields, he discovered something unexpected. Although his martial power still hasn't reached 30, he can now briefly imitate the nameless divine art. During the failed fusion, he experienced the exact same sensation he once felt while using that legendary technique. The moment the memory resurfaces, golden light fills his eyes. Entering that state, Seong immediately channels lightning into his legs. Thunder erupts around him, instantly burning away every zombie nearby. Then he realizes something incredible. If he becomes lightning itself, he can return to the top of the tower in less than a second. Activating lightning steps, Seong shoots through the air like a bolt of lightning. Meanwhile, the idiot standing on top of the tower still thinks provoking Seong was a brilliant idea. Seeing where this is heading, the blonde streamer quickly tells him to stop. Instead of listening, the mage immediately throws a fireball at him and warns him not to interfere unless he wants to burn before anyone else. The blonde turns to the viewers and tells everyone that if they want Seong Jihan to stay safe, they should support him. The mage ignores him completely. His expression turns serious as 3 magic circles appear around him. Gathering far more mana than before, he forms a massive fireball and sarcastically says goodbye to the crystal before launching it straight toward the objective. Just before it lands, Diego Macide kicks his own glowing sphere forward. The soccer ball collides with the fireball and completely cancels it out, protecting the crystal. The ball flies back, scorched, but the defense holds. The mage spins around in disbelief, unable to understand what just happened. Diego simply stares back with a cold expression. When the mage demands an explanation, Diego calmly says he always follows the rules of every match he plays, and he won't let someone ruin one. More importantly, the mage insulted the person carrying the entire team, and even dragged his family into it. That's something Diego refuses to tolerate. Furious, The mage starts screaming curses at him, but before he can continue, Seong suddenly appears directly behind him. The mage doesn't even realize how he got there, while the blonde freezes in complete shock. Looking over his shoulder, the mage finds Seong standing right behind him. Seong calmly says that if he wanted to talk so badly, then they could talk face to face. The moment Death is standing behind him, the mage starts trembling. He can't understand how Seong crossed the battlefield so quickly. Trying to say something, he barely manages to open his mouth before Seong instantly silences him by pinching it shut with force, using only 2 fingers. The mage struggles to speak, but Seong tells him that at first he planned to kill him immediately. Then he changed his mind. Letting him die would be too merciful. Since BattleNet connectors reduce pain and death would only cost him a level, Seong decides he'll teach him what this new world is really like instead. Resting one hand on the mage's shoulder, he calmly reminds him that dying quickly isn't going to happen. The mage desperately convinces himself that he has already lost all his skills anyway. Sure, losing rewards hurts, but at least he succeeded in making Seong angry. Maybe that alone made everything worthwhile. The very next second, unbearable pain explodes throughout his body. His entire body convulses as he wonders what the hell is happening. The pain is unlike anything he's ever experienced. Watching him coldly, Seong asks if he's already screaming. They haven't even started yet. The mage immediately begins howling, begging Seong to stop and pleading for mercy loud enough for everyone watching to hear. Some viewers begin calling Seong far too cruel, while others start agreeing. Then someone notices something strange. BattleNet connectors are supposed to reduce pain, so why is the mage suffering this much? Another viewer realizes Seong is secretly casting healing with his free hand. That makes everything click. Someone explains it's a connector bug. If continuous damage like burning or poison is constantly healed at the same time, the connector overloads and starts letting the pain pass through instead of suppressing it. The mage feels every bit of agony in full force, making him scream even louder. The blonde can only watch in horror, unable to imagine what Seong is actually doing. Inside his own mind, Seong calmly recognizes the technique he's using. It's called displacement, a martial art mastered by only a handful of people. By sending energy directly into an opponent's body, it twists muscles, shatters bones, and destroys the target from the inside before the healing immediately repairs the damage, forcing them to experience the pain again and again. Even with a top-tier BattleNet connector that blocks 95% of pain, the mage feels like his organs are being ripped apart while countless needles stab through every inch of his body. Eventually, he stops begging for mercy and instead begs Seong to simply kill him already, cursing him through the tears. Seong quietly grants that request, cutting off his head with a single slash. As the mage dies, he wonders whether he'll finally respawn somewhere safe. The blonde wisely decides not to even approach Seong anymore after witnessing what happened, silently realizing just how terrifying this man truly is. But the nightmare isn't over. The mage respawns and immediately starts screaming again. One older viewer even jokes that this feels like deja vu. The mage desperately begs anyone to save him. At this point, everyone watching reaches the same conclusion. Seong Ji-han is absolutely terrifying. The mage dies once more, this time from nothing but overwhelming fear and shock. Seong quietly wonders whether he really couldn't endure it before deciding he probably needs to control his own strength better. When the mage respawns again, he instantly falls to his knees, begging Seong not to come near him and pleading for everything to stop. Seong coldly replies that if he wasn't prepared to face the consequences, he never should have started this in the first place. Just then, Seiya suddenly donates 10,000 GP through the livestream. She begs her uncle to stop, saying he's already gone far enough. If he keeps this up, he'll lose all his viewers. The chat is flooded with comments from traumatized viewers saying this is way too much. They only wanted to watch him do something cool, not witness psychological torture. Seiya tells him to calm down and focus on clearing the game instead. Surprisingly, Seong is calmer than everyone expected, though even he still feels the punishment isn't enough. Even so, he decides to stop there. Compared to the brutal future he remembers, these are still peaceful times, and this lesson should be enough. While the mage continues begging for someone to kill him, Seong ignores the pleas because there's still one thing he wants to know. Looking straight into the mage's eyes, he asks who convinced him to do all this. That single stare almost scares the mage to death again. Without hesitating, he blurts everything out. A member called Sword King FC 898 offered him 50,000 GP to sabotage Seong. Completely broken now, the mage repeatedly apologizes, saying he lost his mind after the Sword King's fan club kept showering him with donations until he got carried away. He insists he deserves to die and begs Seong to forgive him. Even after hearing the confession, Seong feels something doesn't add up. Offering 50,000 GP isn't something a single random person normally does, so this is probably bigger than just one fan. Quietly making a mental note, Seong grabs the mage by the collar one last time and tells him to thank Seiya instead, because she's the reason this finally stopped. The mage immediately thanks Seiya over and over before Seong tosses him straight back into the zombie horde. Watching the whole thing unfold, the blonde streamer casually turns back toward his audience and cheerfully says that this is exactly how things work on this channel. If everyone enjoyed the show, they should remember to like and subscribe. With that distraction finally over, Seong decides it's time to get back to hunting zombies. He figures he would have cleared the mission long ago if the mage hadn't wasted his time. Before leaving, he had already reached 921 zombie kills, slicing through the undead without much effort. Confident the last 80 kills will only take a moment, he opens his status window, only to freeze after noticing an unread notification. Somehow, the mission is already complete. Confused, he looks behind him and spots a massive trail of scorched earth stretching across the battlefield, with countless burned zombies scattered everywhere. That's when it clicks. The lightning released during his lightning step had wiped them out. When he launched himself through the air, he failed to fully control the electricity produced by the technique, allowing the leftover energy to explode outward and incinerate everything nearby. Seong quietly admits the result wasn't clean. Instead of using the true nameless divine art, he relied on the unstable fusion of the 3 elixir fields. The power was effective, but still rough around the edges. He knows he'll need much more practice. Just then, the blonde streamer excitedly asks whether Seong is heading back down and if he can tag along. Instead of answering, Seong turns toward Diego, Masid first, and sincerely thanks him for protecting the crystal. Diego simply says he only did what anyone should have done. The atmosphere between them immediately becomes friendlier, and Seong promises he'll repay the favor later. He even says there's something important he wants to discuss with Diego. Before he can explain, however, the entire battlefield suddenly begins shaking violently. Everyone immediately panics. Nothing like this has ever happened during a Bronze League match. The blonde nervously says it feels like something is about to burst out of the ground, while Diego quietly tells him to look ahead. A second later, the earth tears open and an enormous finger erupts from below. As more of it surfaces, everyone realizes they're staring at a gigantic hand with a grotesque mouth growing from its palm. The monster lets out an eerie scream directly at Seong. Nobody can even identify what they're looking at. The blonde simply calls it disgusting, while pointing out how unbelievably huge it is from up close. Then, without warning, the giant hand begins grabbing nearby zombies and stuffing them into its mouth. Seong instantly recognizes what's happening. The creature is devouring them. One after another, the zombies are crushed, eaten, and chewed into disgusting chunks. After swallowing enough corpses, a lump of flesh remains on its tongue before dropping onto the battlefield. Moments later, that lump twists into a brand new monster. The blonde stares in disbelief. That's a flesh golem, a creature that should never appear in a Bronze League match. Even he knows monsters like this normally belong in Gold League content. Alarmed, Seong realizes something is seriously wrong. This doesn't make any sense unless it's connected to the chain quest. Quickly opening his status window, he reads the new objective: defeat the flesh golem without using the crystal's blessing. That final condition immediately catches his attention. At the same time, the system announces that defense map, the 10 towers, has officially been cleared, making the entire situation even stranger. Then another notification appears. Bonus mission unlocked. Eliminate the flesh golem. Everyone is stunned. Bronze maps were never supposed to contain bonus missions, let alone ones involving monsters like this. According to the system, they must eliminate the flesh golem created by the Apostle of Destruction, Black Hand. As the golem begins advancing, the giant hand slowly sinks back beneath the earth, as if its job is already finished. Song calmly explains that the crystal's blessing normally helps bridge the power gap against enemies like this, making the blonde wonder whether this mission is even designed to be beaten. Even Gold League players struggle against flesh golems. Seong agrees. It definitely doesn't look like a normal mission, but if it weren't nearly impossible, the rewards wouldn't be this ridiculous. Clearing it grants 10,000 achievement points and a crystal fragment. The fragment immediately catches Seong's attention. Rewards like that belong on at least an epic mission, making it obvious that's the true prize. While the blonde continues urging him to receive the crystal's blessing before fighting, Seong simply draws the execution greatsword of Priest Lightning immediately begins gathering around the blade as he calmly says he doesn't need the blessing. Locking onto the flesh golem, he begins advancing. He explains that flesh golems are naturally undead, making them incredibly durable. The only way to kill one is by destroying the core hidden deep inside its body. Unfortunately, the constantly shifting flesh and tangled corpses surrounding that core make it extremely difficult to hit. Even Gold League players treat them as dangerous mid-level bosses. No matter how strong Seong is for a bronze player, this fight is still incredibly risky. As lightning surges around him, he quietly tells Diego and the others to step back. None of them have any idea what he's about to do. Then Seong explodes forward. His lightning step strikes the ground with such force that it leaves a deep crater beneath his feet. Watching that terrifying acceleration, the others finally understand just how absurd he really is. While soaring toward the flesh golem, Seong recalls one of the most fundamental techniques within the nameless divine arts, the foundation, built upon its three basic forms. Heaven represents a vertical slash, earth represents a horizontal slash, and man represents a thrust. Those three movements form the core of the entire martial art. Raising his sword high, Seong transitions into another technique that symbolizes the destruction of mountains. One overwhelming vertical slash cleaves the flesh golem clean in half, splitting its body apart while striking its hidden core dead center. Diego is so stunned that he actually drops what he's holding. Neither he nor the blonde can believe Song destroyed the core in a single attack. Song casually comments that, despite its grand name, the technique is really nothing more than a vertical slash. Even so, what he just accomplished is anything but ordinary. The system immediately announces that Seong has defeated the flesh golem, making the fourth tower the first to clear the bonus mission. Everyone watching is left speechless. For the blonde streamer, something changes completely in that moment. Fear, admiration, hope, despair, and excitement all hit him at once. He actually drops to one knee out of pure respect, overwhelmed by what he just witnessed. At first, Seong had simply been entertaining livestream content. Now, he looks like someone destined to stand at the very top of all players. The blonde immediately decides he'll record Seong's journey from beginning to end and capture the birth of a true legend. Moments later, Seong returns to the tower in another flash of lightning. Even if the blonde is completely serious about supporting him now, winning Seong over won't be easy. More importantly, this battle becomes the true beginning of Seong Jihan's relationship with Diego Maceed, setting the foundation for what could become a powerful alliance in the future. Meanwhile, the situation at the other towers is far less fortunate. Players desperately curse the game as flesh golems overwhelm their defenses one after another. Entire towers are destroyed, including the third tower, while several others fall shortly afterward. Eventually, the bonus mission comes to an end, and everyone who successfully cleared it receives triple XP and triple GP. Looking over his rewards, Seong quietly admits this match paid incredibly well. Still, there's one final thing he wants before leaving. Turning toward Diego, he says they can meet outside later. Diego politely refuses any reward, saying Seong already earned him more than enough through the bonus mission. Instead, Diego wants to ask about the strange comment Seong made earlier regarding his abilities. Curious, he asks what exactly Seong meant. Seong only gives him one word, mage. He says, explaining everything here would spoil the surprise, so they'd be better off discussing it over dinner. Diego immediately realizes Seong is hinting that he should change classes. Under normal circumstances, he'd reject an idea like that instantly. But after witnessing everything Seong just accomplished, he can't help becoming interested. If there's truly another class that suits him better, Diego tells Seong to contact him later. Seong likes that answer and casually asks what kind of food he prefers so they can choose a restaurant. Before they can finish, the blonde streamer eagerly jumps in, asking if he can join them too. Diego immediately shuts that idea down, saying this conversation is his reward. Realizing that approach won't work, the blonde quickly changes topics and begs to become Seong's streaming partner, even his editor. Seong casually replies, sure. The blonde immediately lights up, convinced he finally got accepted. A second later, Seong clarifies that by sure, he actually meant no, then walks away without another glance, leaving the blonde standing there alone, looking like he's about to cry. Later, after returning home, Seong clears the linked quest Zombies Origin 2, earning 10,000 achievement points and a crystal fragment. The next linked quest, Traces of the Disciple, won't unlock until he reaches the Silver League. Looking over the rewards, he feels the 10,000 points are completely justified after how ridiculous that bonus mission was. He's happy he unlocked his new power earlier than expected, but the crystal fragment is a little disappointing. It grants a single use of Divine Blessing, but only inside the Bronze and Silver Leagues. Song explains that holy support players are normally the only ones capable of using Divine Blessing, and it's considered one of the strongest buffs in BattleNet because it boosts every stat by 50. That's why it's so valuable in higher leagues. The downside is that this fragment only works once, and only in Bronze or Silver, making it far less impressive than it first sounds. Next, he checks his completion rewards. Since he finished first, he receives a 50% bonus to both GP and EXP, levels up again, earns 6,000 GP, and raises both his martial power and strength to 17. Even after that growth, he still needs 12 more levels before he can enter the Silver League promotion match. Looking at his stats, he can't help wondering if anyone in BattleNet's history has ever progressed this quickly. Just then, the Otherworld Relic Executioner Sword suddenly reacts. The system announces that Seong has fully understood the Otherworld faith, granting him 1 point of divine power. He immediately notices that divine power is once again being converted into strength, while the relic's rank falls from C rank to E rank. Something doesn't add up though. His strength doesn't actually increase, making him question whether divine power and strength really convert at a 1-to-1 ratio. Before he can figure it out, the horse-slaying sword suddenly reaches its limit. Unable to contain the enormous energy inside it any longer, the weapon begins cracking before shattering completely. A violent explosion erupts as the power stored within its 3 elixir fields bursts outward. The blast is far stronger than Seong expected, and flying fragments slice into his body. He quickly realizes the sword simply couldn't withstand the power released by destruction of Mount Tai. The explosion fills the room with blinding light, and Seong understands the danger immediately. He has to absorb that overflowing energy again, but the amount released is far beyond what his current body should be capable of handling. Only after the violent flash finally fades does everything return to normal. Meanwhile, someone has been watching everything from the neighboring building. It's Takeda from Japan, who reveals that he deliberately moved nearby to keep Seong under constant surveillance. Thinking back, he remembers that the anonymous message and the money offered to the mage during the previous match both came from him. The entire sabotage attempt was his plan from the beginning. Wondering how badly the mage failed, Takeda sarcastically calls himself nothing more than a helping hand for someone chasing the same goal. If everything had gone according to plan, he would have gotten his revenge while forcing Seong to reveal his status windows. Instead, he complains that everyone involved turned out to be useless. Pretending to be a member of the Sword King's fan club had been enough to manipulate the mage into targeting Seong, proving just how easy people like that were to control. Takeda knows Seong is already wary of him, but he believes the real weakness lies in the people around Seong. The mage clearly wanted to sabotage him, yet somehow couldn't even destroy the crystal. Frustrated, Takeda mutters that they still haven't shown Seong what real defeat looks like. After watching his entire scheme collapse, he reluctantly admits that maybe interfering through other people simply isn't worth it. It would have been much easier if luck had helped for once. Instead, that idiot wasted time provoking Seong instead of breaking the crystal immediately. Had he done that, Seong would have been forced to reveal his status windows. The thought only makes Takeda angrier. Nothing is going according to plan anymore, and if this keeps up, someone else might recruit Seong before Japan gets the chance. Takeda understands from experience that Seong Jihan is exactly the kind of player Japan absolutely has to recruit. The problem is that his own position inside the self-defense force ring isn't strong enough to act freely. His superiors refuse to move based only on his judgment. They want undeniable proof before approving any recruitment attempt, which is why they continue demanding more evidence to support everything Takeda has been reporting. More than anything else, he needs Seong's status windows. Once he gets those, his company will finally believe him, just like they did with the Sword King. Quietly convincing himself that sloppy tricks won't be enough anymore, Takeda decides he'll simply wait a little longer. Once he secures Seong's status windows and receives official approval, he'll personally make Seong his, using that special method. As that thought crosses his mind, he pictures the mysterious woman with the enchanting scent, the one capable of drawing talented players toward Japan. As the divine power inside him continues increasing, Seong notices something interesting. Every 3 points of divine power convert into 1 point of strength, and because martial power is linked to strength, it rises as well. That's how his martial power reaches 18. He starts wondering if the leftover divine power stored inside the sword was absorbed when it shattered. Losing the weapon is unfortunate, but the result is still worthwhile. His strength also reaches 18, though there's now a major limitation. From this point onward, he can only absorb divine power from A-rank relics or higher. That realization immediately kills his mood. Relics at that level are incredibly rare, almost impossible to obtain casually. Until now, he'd been growing ridiculously fast by feeding on low-ranked relics, but that shortcut has officially come to an end. If he wants to keep getting stronger, he'll have to spend real money. Right then, a headache starts creeping in, and Seiya walks into the room. She tells him the 50 million has already been transferred into her account. Seong is surprised it arrived so quickly, but before he can react, Seiya notices the condition he's in. She asks what happened, and he casually explains that his weapon suddenly exploded. He tells her not to worry, but blood immediately starts running down his forehead, making her panic. She quickly tells him to sit down so she can clean the wound, complaining that she thought he'd finally started acting like an adult, but he's still just a kid. Hearing that strangely makes Seong happy, quietly wondering if maybe she's right. Later, after patching him up, Seiya asks once again if he's really okay. Seong wonders why she's asking again, but she explains it's because after receiving 50 million, eating something as cheap as pork belly feels strange. He asks if that's really a problem. She quickly says that's not what she meant. She actually likes pork belly, but she'd always thought Seong preferred Western food. Smiling, Seong admits that after spending so many years living in the United States, he actually started missing Korean food. As far as he's concerned, this is the first real Korean meal he's had since returning to the past. Foreign food is nice once in a while, but Korean food is still the best. Even so, Seiya reminds him that she's paying this time, so he could have chosen somewhere much more expensive. Seong simply says it's fine because they'll be eating together for a long time anyway. That immediately makes Seiya point out that they actually shouldn't be eating together every day. Confused, Seong asks why. She explains that she plans to return to BattleNet Academy. Despite everything that's happened recently, she's still the student council president, and relaxing at home feels wrong. Seong asks why she isn't following her teacher's advice to rest for a week, but she changes the subject instead. Her blessing ceremony at the Hall of Gifts is coming soon. Hearing that instantly reminds Seong that today is only August 8th, while Seiya's 18th birthday, August 22nd, is only 2 weeks away. Even during his previous life, when everything around her had already fallen apart, she looked forward to that ceremony because she believed receiving a powerful gift would change her future. Instead, she received an F-rank gift, and that crushing disappointment became the moment her spirit truly broke. Remembering that painful future leaves Seong unsettled. He knows telling her the truth now would only crush her before the ceremony even happens. So instead, he decides he'll slowly lower her expectations over time. Asking if she's returning to the academy tomorrow, he learns it's Monday, making the timing perfect. He immediately says he'll drive her there himself. Surprised, Seiya asks why he's suddenly acting like this. She reminds him she's not a little kid anymore and doesn't need someone worrying about her. Seong calmly replies that they both know their current situation and that he's already made up his mind. Even though she still doesn't understand why he's changed so suddenly, she's clearly happy about it. Seeing that makes Seong laugh, which only annoys her more before he simply tells her to let it go. Later, the two head outside, but Seong immediately notices something feels different. Almost every car is gone. Wondering what happened, he learns that all of them were sold. Suddenly, it makes sense why he couldn't find any keys earlier. Sia figures she'll just take the bus instead, but Seong notices there's still one old car left. Walking over, Seiya quietly explains that it used to belong to her mother. Seong figures Yoon Se-jin either couldn't bring himself to sell it or, more likely, nobody wanted to buy it. Checking the door, he finds it unlocked with the key still inside. Seiya can't believe he's seriously planning to drive it. The moment the engine starts, the battered old car coughs out thick smoke like it's barely alive. When Seong asks why she's making that face, she insists she isn't embarrassed, only worried. Before she can explain, the answer arrives by itself. Not long after reaching BattleNet Academy, a cocky student immediately storms over and orders Seong to move that piece of junk somewhere else. Seiya quietly mutters that this is exactly what she was worried about. The guy keeps barking at Seong, insisting that the parking spot belongs to them. Stepping out of the car, Seong calmly asks what the actual problem is. The student arrogantly repeats that the space belongs to him. Seong immediately tells him to watch his mouth because he's the legal guardian of a student attending the academy and has every right to park there. That's when someone nearby suddenly recognizes him. Within moments, word spreads across the entrance. Seong Ji-han, the Bronze Killer, has arrived at BattleNet Academy. Students immediately begin crowding around, excitedly asking for photos so they can post them online. At the Twin Stars Guild, Lee Haeyeon suddenly tells Lim Gaeyong they need to leave immediately. Confused, Gaeyong asks what's happening, and Haeyeon excitedly reveals that Seong Ji-han showed up at BattleNet Academy. When Gaeyong asks why they're rushing so much, Haeyeon complains that after dressing up just to look pretty for him, he still ignored her. Now she's determined to make him fall for her instead. Declaring that she won't let him get away after rejecting her, she rushes out, yelling for Seong Ji-han to wait because she's not giving up on him that easily. Meanwhile, the arrogant student at the academy keeps mocking Seong, calling him a beggar who arrived in a beggar's car. He even orders Seong to kneel before trying to punch him. Before the fist can connect, Seong calmly activates force. The attacker suddenly freezes, his punch stopping just inches from Seong's face. Everyone watching immediately notices something is wrong as the guy panics, wondering why his body won't move. Without taking a single step, Seong raises one hand, uses force to completely suppress him, then slams him straight into the ground. Calling him unbelievably rude, Seong says that as another student's guardian, he should know how to behave instead of acting like a street thug. Embarrassed by all the attention, Seiya quickly begs her uncle to stop because everyone is staring. Just then, a girl inside a nearby car calls out to Seiya. She turns around in surprise, and Seong realizes she's one of her friends. The girl, Hee-soo, greets Seiya, saying it's been a long time. She then questions her bodyguard about what just happened, but he awkwardly claims he simply slipped, even though everyone knows that's a terrible excuse. After apologizing, Hee-soo asks Seiya what happened to all the expensive cars she used to arrive in, and why she's driving such an old one now. Seiya honestly explains that her father sold all of them. Hearing that, Hee-soo immediately insists that Seiya should have told her sooner because arriving at this academy without a proper car simply won't do. She offers to personally give Seiya a ride to school every day and promises she'll talk to her father about it. Although Seiya hesitates because she doesn't want to cause trouble, Hee-soo brushes it aside until she finally agrees. Watching the conversation, Seong quietly realizes that Seiya actually has a genuinely close friend, something he never knew before, and the discovery feels surprisingly comforting. Not long afterward, Haeyeon and Gaeyong finally reach BattleNet Academy, only to find out they're too late. Haeyeon asks where Seong Ji-han went, pointing out she got there in less than 10 minutes, so there's no way he should already be gone. Someone nearby casually tells her he left quite a while ago. Gaeyong calmly says she expected this to happen, making Haeyeon furious. She can't believe two grown men managed to start a fight, but still couldn't keep him there for even 10 minutes. Stressing over the possibility of foreign organizations targeting Seong before they can recruit him, Haeyeon starts nervously biting her nails. Gaeyong immediately grabs her hand and reminds her that Haeyeon herself once said, "Things always go badly whenever she bites her nails, so she needs to stop." Haeyeon pauses, almost forgetting she ever said that, then sighs. When Gayoung asks what the plan is now, Haeyeon immediately opens Seong Jihan's livestream. Smiling confidently, she declares she'll just hunt him down while he's streaming instead, and together the two of them jump into his broadcast. At that moment, Seong is absolutely running through everyone in the match. One player tries to block him with a shield, but Seong stomps him so hard that the shield shatters, leaving everyone watching stunned that he destroyed it with his bare foot. 2 points on his body begin glowing as he activates the nameless divine arts, Brilliant Sky, and Thunder Steps. He tears through the battlefield wrapped in lightning, electrocuting enemies and blasting them into the air while dropping player after player without slowing down. He admits it feels great, realizing that focusing on his senses is helping him adapt to his new body much faster. Wanting to test himself a little longer, he keeps fighting as everyone around him starts panicking, wondering if it's really Seong Jihan again. After all, this is the same guy who one-shot the Gold League boss, the Flesh Golem, and now even standing near him is enough to make bronze players tremble. Moving across the battlefield like a human lightning bolt, he wipes out rookies before they even realize where the attacks are coming from. To everyone else, Seong is basically a natural disaster. When the match ends, Seong returns to reality on top of a building. The system announces that he finished first place again, making it 5 consecutive first-place victories, shocking everyone. As a reward, his EXP and gold rewards permanently increase by 200%. Even he didn't expect that bonus. He also levels up twice, reaching level 15, which unlocks dungeons. Seong explains that dungeons are special content that opens at level 15 and are much more complicated than normal matches. They include traps, maze-like paths, hidden puzzles, and difficult mechanics, making teamwork extremely important. Even Battle.net recommends entering with a party. Still, Seong immediately rejects the idea of joining a guild because too many people are already targeting him. If teammates entered a dungeon intending to sabotage him, he'd be in real trouble. Joining a guild would only create problems later if he decided to leave, so he chooses to keep fighting alone for now. He figures he'll eventually reach Platinum League, and once he does, he'll simply create his own guild with people he already has in mind. Later that night, Seong cooks dinner for Seiya and asks her to set the table. While they eat, she asks why he's suddenly such a good cook. He laughs, saying this barely counts as cooking, but she insists it tastes great. He promises to make her a proper meal next time, thinking that cooking one meal every day during his years in America really paid off. The conversation shifts when he asks if she'll be riding with her friend again, but she immediately refuses, saying the ride home was so awkward she'd rather not repeat it. She remembers her friend constantly asking if she was okay, saying everything must be painful, wondering how her father could abandon her like that, and asking if there was anything she could do to help. Seong agrees that hearing all that would be exhausting. Then Seiya casually adds that her mother's old car is actually much nicer and more comfortable anyway, making Seong simply nod in agreement. The next day, Seong drives Seiya back to Battle.net Academy, where people immediately recognize him. Reporters and talent scouts have completely surrounded the entrance, making Seiya complain that he's getting way too much attention. Seong jokes that they look more like stalkers than reporters as security orders everyone off the school grounds. Thinking they should probably bring a different car next time, he suddenly notices Lee Haeyeon and Lim Gaeong waiting outside. Seiya instantly realizes they're there to meet her uncle, while Seong looks confused until Haeyeon points out that she personally gave him her business card, yet he never called her. Seiya quietly decides not to interrupt this time, while Seong suddenly remembers he completely forgot about the card. Haeyeon boldly steps right in front of him and asks for a few minutes of his time, instantly drawing everyone's attention. Since she already offered him a gold-level contract, people can't wait to see what she'll do next if he still refuses. Seong points out they're attracting far too much attention by talking in public, but Haeyeon says she's used to everyone staring at her. She explains she's much more comfortable here because she graduated from this academy herself. The only thing she still can't accept is how completely he ignored her afterward. Realizing she means never contacting her, Seong apologizes, admitting he simply got busy and honestly forgot. Haeyeon lets it slide, saying this is her first time chasing someone herself, which is exactly why she prepared something worthy of him. She hands him a platinum contract, leaving everyone nearby completely speechless. Offering a platinum contract to someone who's still only in the Bronze League is almost unheard of. One rival recruiter immediately gives up on competing. Even Seong didn't expect her to push things this far. Haeyeon proudly says she personally fought to make this contract happen, hoping he'll understand just how serious she is about recruiting him. As she leans in confidently, trying to pressure him, Gaeong can only stare in disbelief at how determined she is. Instead of reacting to the contract, Seong calmly remarks that her perfume smells exactly like the one Zero used to wear. While Haeyeon wonders how he can stay so calm at a moment like this, Seong becomes even more convinced that Lee Haeyeon really is Zero from his previous life. Feeling her pride taking another hit after failing to get even his phone number, Haeyeon decides she'll just send him a sealed copy of the contract later, before realizing they still have no way to contact each other. Seong immediately asks if she's trying to get his number, striking her weak spot so perfectly that even Gaeong points it out. Irritated, Haeyeon asks what he'll do if she actually is. Seong proposes a bet instead. He explains he just reached level 15, meaning his next BattleNet match will be a dungeon, something Haeyeon can hardly believe happened in only a month. Curious, she asks about the wager. Seong says he'll enter the dungeon right now, and if he fails to finish first place, he'll sign with the Twin Stars Guild and give her his phone number. Haeyeon warns him that countless people are targeting him already, while Gaeon can't believe he plans to enter a dungeon completely alone without a guild or party. Seong simply replies that it wouldn't be much of a bet if he already had a guaranteed chance of winning. Haeyeon admits that's true, but it still worries her. When she asks what he wants if he wins, Seong says she has to show him her status window. He needs to confirm whether she still possesses the stimulation gift he remembers from the future. The request suddenly makes Haeyeon shy, since most people currently consider that gift completely worthless. Taking her reaction as confirmation, Seong silently notes he's probably right. She eventually agrees, warning him not to regret the deal later. Then, as she suggests moving somewhere else before he queues up, Seong says there's no need. He simply tells her to wait there, enters the BattleNet, tells everyone he'll be back soon, and disappears right in front of them. As soon as Seong enters the Conqueror's Tomb dungeon, the system announces it's a high-difficulty dungeon. It's the underground tomb of a legendary conqueror, famous for having enormous numbers of monsters while containing very few traps or puzzles. Even so, it's still known as one of the hardest dungeons to clear. The win condition is that every member of the party has to survive until the end, making teammates incredibly important. As the player summoning finishes and the match begins, Seong looks around and feels relieved because, at first glance, these random teammates don't seem bad. The others are surprised to see Seong Ji-han in their party, and he quickly notices that 3 of them are probably from the Black Eagle Guild based on their equipment. They respectfully tell him it's an honor to meet him, while viewers in the chat recognize the guild immediately. Others are shocked that Seong already unlocked dungeons by reaching level 15. One teammate suggests they should aim for first place since Seong is with them, and another agrees, believing they can definitely win. They ask him to lead, but Seong stops them and says he'll take the front himself. They remind him he isn't the party's warrior, but he calmly replies that he trusts his own combat strength. Although everyone is surprised, they decide to follow him anyway. As they move forward, Seong quietly admits he's relieved there doesn't seem to be a troll in the party this time, because the dungeon's clear condition had worried him. At the entrance, on the first floor, a group of tomb guards appears. The others immediately become nervous, because those stone soldiers are famous for their incredible defense. Seong once again tells everyone he'll go first. They protest, saying the mage should clear a path with magic instead, but Seong simply tells them to stay behind him. Then he charges forward empty-handed and destroys every tomb guard using nothing but pure brute force. One after another, the statues are smashed apart with his bare hands, something the others never imagined was possible. They can only stare in disbelief, asking what they're even witnessing, while Seong casually tells them to keep following him and continues deeper into the dungeon without slowing down. Along the way, he explains that the Conqueror's Tomb contains 10 different routes, each leading toward the 7th underground floor, the dungeon's final area. Their party started on the 8th route, and by continuously pushing forward under Seong's lead, they quickly arrived at the 3rd floor. The others admit that seeing him fight in person is even crazier than watching the videos. Those stone soldiers are supposed to have extremely high defense, yet Seong tears through them like they're made of sand. To him, though, everything is just as easy as he expected. The viewers are shocked he still hasn't used a weapon since the previous match, although one commenter points out that after watching him defeat the flesh golem in one hit, why would he even need one in Bronze League? Right then, Takeda donates another 10,000 GP. The viewers immediately start wondering what Takeda is trying to accomplish, but Seong already knows that creepy guy is obsessed with him. Without hesitating, Seong tells everyone not to worry, because no matter what happens, he's never going to Japan, then immediately blocks Takeda, making the viewers cheer. Continuing forward, they clear the 3rd floor, and Seong remarks they're moving faster than a jet, because most parties would still be finishing the 1st floor by now. The warrior still can't understand how Seong keeps breaking through monsters that tough, while the mage thanks him for carrying the entire run and feels guilty for doing almost nothing. Seong simply tells him not to worry, because not causing trouble is already helping plenty, adding that he'd be happy to play together again. As soon as they reach the 4th floor, Seong suddenly stops. The perfectly straight path ahead immediately feels wrong. He tells everyone to inspect the walls and floor, and the mage quickly realizes the room is packed with almost every trap imaginable. Seeing that, Seong asks if everyone minds if he speeds things up. After they agree, he tells them he'll personally deal with every trap before charging ahead. However, the moment Seong gets farther away, the warrior secretly reveals his true objective. A member of the Sword King's fan club offered him a mission worth 1 million GP kill himself without Seong noticing. The shocking part is that every member of the Black Eagle Guild received the exact same mission, and the person behind it all is Takeda, the same man Seong just blocked. Watching everything from afar, Takeda admits he didn't want to repeat the same trick twice, but throwing money around is all he can do now. After buying every member of Song's party, he gave them one simple order. The moment Song rushes too far ahead, one of them only needs to commit suicide. Since the dungeon requires every teammate to survive, The instant one dies, Seong automatically loses. Smugly believing Seong has absolutely no way to escape this trap, Takeda becomes convinced his victory is guaranteed. But just as he's celebrating in his head, a mysterious golden light suddenly appears. Meanwhile, Seong continues charging through the trapped hallway while effortlessly disarming every mechanism. Arrows constantly shoot toward him, making the mage panic as he yells for Seong to dodge, offering to stop the arrows with magic. Seong calmly replies that it's unnecessary before activating absolute territory, his space control ability. The instant the domain forms, every arrow freezes in midair before reaching him. Everyone freezes in shock, unable to believe what they just witnessed. The mage stares in disbelief, asking what kind of skill could possibly do something like that. But when he looks toward the rest of the party, he notices something horrifying. One teammate has a sword pressed against his own neck, while another is aiming an arrow at himself. Immediately, he screams for Seong to look behind him. Seong turns around and instantly realizes they're trying to commit suicide. Before either of them can finish, he activates the nameless divine arts, channels lightning through his body, and uses shining heavenly steps to close the distance in an instant. He destroys both weapons before they can be used, leaving both players clutching their throbbing arms. Then he grabs one of them with overwhelming strength and slams him into the ground. The mage nervously asks if everything is over now, but Seong calmly says he stopped them just in time. One teammate angrily asks if the other received the same suicide mission too, only to be told to shut up. Watching them argue, Seong immediately understands the entire situation. Both of them accepted identical missions because if either one died first, the dungeon would immediately fail. Feeling ashamed, the mage apologizes on behalf of the Black Eagle Guild, but Seong tells him there's no need because he's simply glad everyone is still alive. However, the very next moment, the mage secretly begins casting a spell directly into his own chest. Before the magic can fire, Seong casually raises one hand and stops the spell in midair with telekinetic force. Seong calmly explains that's exactly why he said there was no need to apologize. He already knew the mage had received the exact same suicide mission as the others. Completely stunned, the mage insists he never acted suspiciously even once, leaving everyone watching the stream asking the exact same question: how did Seong figure it out? Just then, the mysterious narrator finally reveals himself its golden light. He donates 10,000 GP and warns Seong that every Black Eagle Guild member was bribed with 1 million GP to kill themselves. Proudly calling himself Seong's trusted assistant, he explains that as Seong's biggest fan, he was watching Seong's stream while also monitoring the other teammates' streams. That's when he saw the exact moment they received the Sword King fan club mission. He immediately spent 10,000 GP on a donation just to warn Seong, saying it was worth it if it meant serving justice. He even begs Seong to officially accept him as his editor. Even so, Seong feels something about this whole situation doesn't add up. Using force, he slams the three traitors to the ground and points out that even if someone held a personal grudge against him, spending nearly 1 billion won on a single mission is completely insane. Even if someone's life depended on it, that amount of money makes no sense. The chat agrees, and after picking up a sword lying nearby, Seong reaches a conclusion. Whoever is behind this either has the backing of a high-ranking guild or possesses special authority equal to the Sword King's influence. The viewers agree that it makes perfect sense, because spending that much money just to force someone to reveal a status window is beyond obsessive. Some viewers immediately suspect that creepy guy, and when Seong asks who they mean, Takeda suddenly goes completely silent, making everyone even more suspicious of him. Seong says whoever it is has been trying to force him into revealing his status window through dirty tricks. Because of that, he changes his streaming promise. Instead of revealing it at 200,000 subscribers, he'll now wait until 1 million subscribers, although his promise to reveal it if he ever loses a match remains unchanged. He jokes that he was already worried 200,000 subscribers would come too quickly, but thanks to all this drama, he earned more money, more attention, and even more viewers, so he might as well aim for 1 million instead. Then Seong picks up an F-rank binding rope, striking a dramatic pose that immediately makes the viewers laugh. They joke that he somehow looks dangerous just holding a simple rope. Seong explains that it's an F-rank restraint item, designed for tying up defeated enemies. It's sturdy, durable, and perfect for what he has in mind. Smiling, he asks everyone what they think about dragging all three traitors through the dungeon like little kids. Bound together, the three are pulled across the ground, slammed into walls, and dragged through every hallway until they finally arrive at the 6th underground floor. A monster's voice echoes through the chamber, repeatedly warning them not to disturb its rest, while chanting that the Emperor is eternal. As the bound traitors continue getting dragged around like stray dogs, they wonder how their lives reached this point, while the viewers can't stop laughing, asking why the loudmouth suddenly became so quiet. The warrior can't understand how someone else in the Bronze League could possibly be this strong. The story then flashes back 10 minutes earlier, when the three traitors were still threatening Seong, demanding he release them. Suspended helplessly in midair by his telekinetic force, they warn him that refusing would make him the Black Eagle Guild's #1 enemy. Seong calmly responds by piercing one man's armor using nothing but a single finger infused with martial arts. Everyone is stunned. He asks whether they seriously believe a guild would risk protecting trash like them. Then, using precise strikes to their pressure points, Song drains the strength from their bodies until the warrior hangs there limply, like an overcooked noodle. He repeats the technique on the others, making the warrior realize Seong is attacking their pressure points, something only highly advanced martial artist warriors are supposed to know. He had assumed Seong was only a support, but now realizes he was completely wrong. Desperate, the warrior tries bringing up Seiya to provoke him, remembering how sensitive Seong is whenever his niece is mentioned. Before he can finish the sentence, Seong instantly seals his mouth shut using force, wondering why this idiot simply refuses to stay quiet. After that, the three spend the rest of the journey getting dragged across the floor like garbage bags, while Seong occasionally heals them just enough to keep them alive. One of them actually starts saying the healing feels good before another immediately tells him to shut up. The viewers notice Seong repeatedly healing them, and someone points out that he has no choice, because if any of them dies, the dungeon immediately fails. Still dragging the three behind him, Seong reaches the 6th floor and says clearing this area will take them to the final stage and the boss room. The moment he enters the next chamber, something immediately feels wrong. The room is pitch black and filled with countless clay soldiers standing everywhere. Then Seong senses movement behind him as well. The soldiers suddenly rush toward the bound traitors instead of him, trying to kill them outright. Seong instantly intercepts the attack, catching a soldier's blade just before it reaches their faces. He throws the 3 traitors out of danger, blocks another sword strike, destroys the attacking soldier, and charges into the rest of the army. He cuts through them effortlessly, making viewers comment that it's been a while since they last saw him actually use a sword. Suddenly, one defeated soldier rises back to its feet, its eyes glowing brightly. Even Seong visibly shudders as the entire tomb begins trembling. Then a voice echoes through the chamber, and every single clay soldier awakens at once, their glowing eyes showing they've entered a complete frenzy. At that moment, the system issues a mission: eliminate every clay guard for 1,000 conquest points. Seong smiles, saying it's been a while since he received a mission like this. The last similar one was during the defense map. First, he creates a protective shield around the 3 traitors, then casually drops his massive sword right on top of them, nearly giving them heart attacks. One of them asks why he bothered shielding them if he was just going to drop a giant sword on their heads anyway. Song calmly explains the point wasn't to scare them, but to prove that the shield can easily block attacks from the clay soldiers. Now that he no longer needs to personally protect them, he activates absolute territory, slowing every enemy that enters its range. He admits this ability still amazes him every time he uses it. Inside this domain, everything slows down while he controls the battlefield completely. Using nothing but his bare hands, Seong tears through wave after wave of clay soldiers, explaining that this is a space where he has absolute control. He even comments that someone as talented as Baron Williams wasted such an incredible ability by using it only to increase mana. Finally, deciding playtime is over, Seong explodes forward with overwhelming power, smashing every remaining clay soldier to pieces and clearing the mission with ridiculous ease. Only then is it revealed why the Conqueror's tomb is so infamous. The dungeon can only be cleared if every single party member survives until the end. The Conqueror slowly opens his eyes and welcomes the intruders, saying that humans are creatures who endlessly steal gold only to have it stolen from them in return, so he'll gladly give them what they came for. Song immediately realizes those words must be connected to the dungeon's final clear condition. The Conqueror warns them to mind their manners, and the system reveals that the last requirement is to earn the respect of everyone present. Everyone watching is shocked that Seong has already reached the boss room. As glowing symbols spread across the floor, Seong suddenly throws the 3 traitors forward, cuts the ropes binding them, and forces them back onto their feet, using absolute territory. Their bodies begin moving against their own will as he controls them like puppets. With his strength reaching 18, both the range and power of his territory have increased. The Conqueror raises his bow, but Seong calmly stays in the middle, knowing he's close enough to control all 3 at once. Then he forces them to kneel before the Conqueror and slams their heads into the floor in a perfect bow. Figuring that's enough to satisfy the condition, he waits. The Conqueror smiles, praises their manners, and tells them they may return to where they came from. Just like that, Seong clears the 7th underground floor, leaving everyone stunned that he practically carried the entire dungeon by himself. As the return gate begins opening, one of the traitors grumbles that he lost his chance at the $1,000,000,000 reward, while the mage is simply relieved they managed to clear the dungeon. Then everyone notices Seong isn't moving. Instead, he laughs after reading another notification. A secret quest appears. Show genuine respect to the Conqueror. The reward is 5,000 conquest points, along with the Conqueror's arrow. Seeing the giant arrow listed as a reward surprises even Seong, since it's practically the size of a spear, but the words genuine respect immediately catch his attention. Without warning, he pulls the mage toward himself with telekinesis and loudly addresses the Conqueror as the king of looters, claiming that's the greatest respect he can possibly offer. The Conqueror silently watches while the terrified mage wonders what kind of insane plan Seong has come up with. Without hesitating, Seong grabs the mage and throws him directly toward the Conqueror. Before the poor guy can even reach him, the Conqueror's savage horse tears his head clean off, killing him instantly. The surviving knight freezes in horror, while the viewers completely lose it, asking how someone could die like that. The Conqueror calmly asks Seong whether he truly meant calling him the king of looters. Seong confidently replies that a Conqueror is simply the highest level any looter could ever achieve, making it the greatest compliment possible. Then he boldly says that instead of taking ordinary gold, he'd rather claim something far more valuable, the Conqueror's arrow itself. Since he understood the value of the arrow enough to ask for it, that proves his genuine respect, making it the true condition for clearing the secret quest. The Conqueror bursts into loud laughter, praising Seong's answer as magnificent. Deeply impressed, he gathers tremendous power, raises his sword, and declares he'll reward Seong with his greatest treasure. Seong thanks him while quietly preparing himself to attack. The Conqueror then points the enormous phoenix arrow directly at him and tells him to come claim it. The entire chamber is swallowed by terrifying pressure. The surviving archer suddenly starts gasping for air, saying he can't breathe, before realizing he's literally catching fire. Players around him begin burning alive, and the viewers are horrified as people start combusting one after another from the unbelievable heat. Even Seong starts sweating heavily under the overwhelming pressure. He immediately realizes that if the arrow is fired, he'll die just like everyone else. Still, he can't let the remaining teammates die first, because once they disappear, all of their weapons vanish with them. Molten gold begins flowing across the floor from the incredible heat, and before the phoenix arrow is even fired, the surviving archer burns to death. Feeling the monstrous heat instinctively, Seong instantly understands there's absolutely no way he can face that attack head-on. No matter what he does, his only option is to destroy the bow before the phoenix arrow can ever be released. At that moment, Seong recalls an old story about a wandering martial artist who met a wise sage. The sage promised to show him the true path and taught him complete devotion to martial arts through the 3 talents. Remembering that lesson, Seong unleashes the path of the immortal sage, the fastest technique he possesses. Pushing his body beyond its limits until he practically becomes lightning itself, he rushes straight toward the Conqueror. His unbelievable strike slices away half of the Conqueror's face, while simultaneously shattering the bow and knocking the phoenix arrow away before it can ever be fired. The broken arrow crashes harmlessly into the ground, leaving everyone completely speechless. The Conqueror quietly asks Seong's name. Confident his gamble paid off, Seong introduces himself as Seong Jihan. The Conqueror repeats his name, calling him admirable, before hurling the gigantic phoenix arrow toward him as his reward. Even at incredible speed, Seong catches the spear-sized weapon with one hand. The Conqueror officially declares that Seong has earned the right to inherit the phoenix arrow, and says he looks forward to meeting him again on a greater battlefield than this one, before disappearing. Seong smiles, agreeing that he'd like to meet him again someday, since BattleNet contains countless battlefields where their paths could cross. Looking at the oversized arrow, he jokes that after removing the feathers, it'll make a perfect spear. The viewers immediately flood the chat asking what technique he just used because they couldn't follow it even after slowing the replay down to 0.25x speed. Seong explains that the path of the immortal sage isn't just unbelievably fast. It compresses sword chi into a single point, allowing perfectly precise long-range attacks. He notices his mastery of the nameless divine arts steadily improving, becoming much smoother and more stable, while consuming far less energy than before. At this rate, he believes he'll soon be able to properly perform the art's true basic forms. The system then announces that because the Conqueror personally acknowledged him, Seong is now permanently exempt from the 7th floor's respect trial. Smiling, he wonders whether that shocked the viewers as much as it shocked everyone else. Then he suddenly remembers one teammate actually survived. Looking at the remaining warrior, who's still trying to process everything that just happened, Seong calmly asks when the archer died. Raising the phoenix arrow like a spear, he says he isn't kind enough to let someone who betrayed him walk away with first place. Before the warrior can even finish speaking, Seong kills him on the spot, deciding that after everything the man tried to do, he deserved exactly that ending. Then the game finally wraps up, and everyone waiting outside is stunned when Seong Jihan walks out holding that massive spear. Even now, people are still asking whether that thing is seriously supposed to be an arrow. He takes first place yet again, and everyone wants to know how he managed to clear a bronze dungeon like that. Seong asks if they were even watching his stream, then casually reminds them that he finished in first place again. Lim Gaeyong admits she still can't get used to it, no matter how many times she watches him pull off something ridiculous. Haeyeon also calls him amazing. Remembering the promise she made, Seong tells her to show him her status window and warns her not to back out now. She agrees, but immediately looks nervous and asks him to lower the spear first because it's seriously intimidating. Gaeyoung says the pressure coming from that thing is so intense that she almost feels like drawing her sword, even though she'd probably die instantly if she actually tried. Haeyeon definitely doesn't appreciate that comment. She warns Seong one more time that he might regret asking, but he only laughs. He already knows her gift is A-rank stimulus, a support ability that boosts other players and helps them develop faster. Haeyeon immediately begs him not to tell anyone. Gaeyoung asks if she's really okay revealing it when she hates talking about her gift so much. Haeyeon explains that she used to hate it because she spent all her money thinking she'd received a useless ability. Watching new guild rookies get amazing gifts made her insanely jealous, especially after she'd wasted everything, and even prayed for days hoping she'd get something like stimulus. At one point, she even wondered why she had bothered coming to such a trash academy. Gaeyoung finds the whole thing crazy because Haeyeon used to complain non-stop about both the academy and her gift. Yet now her entire life revolves around that very same ability. Life really does take people in completely unexpected directions. Haeyeon gets embarrassed when Seong stays quiet and asks why he's not saying anything. Instead, he starts laughing, which only makes her more uncomfortable. She asks if laughing directly in someone's face isn't a little rude. Seong says he's not laughing at her or making fun of her. He's just genuinely happy. That leaves Haeyeon confused and asking what exactly he's so happy about. Rather than explain, Seong pulls out his phone and simply asks for her number. Haeyeon points out that she already gave him her business card, so what's the point now that he knows she's lost the bet? Seong says he just wants her number. She reminds him that her number was already written on the card, but he casually admits he lost it. That makes her seriously irritated. She can't believe this guy rejected her before, lost the card she gave him, and is now suddenly asking for her number anyway. She starts wondering if he's only interested because of her gift, but even that doesn't make sense to her. The more she thinks about it, the more she feels like he's deliberately messing with her. Her pride takes another hit, and she initially refuses to hand over her number after everything that's happened. But eventually she gives up with an annoyed, "Whatever, I'll do it." She saves her contact with her name, her job title, and even adds a tiny heart. Then she asks if he's finally satisfied. Seong notices the heart, but before he can say anything, Haeyeon goes silent and calls Lim Gaeyoung over so they can leave. She asks what he thinks, clearly wondering whether he noticed the heart and whether he'll delete the contact. Seong decides not to push things and simply laughs, saying he'll call her later. That only irritates her even more. She wonders what is wrong with this guy and calls him unbelievably annoying before walking away. Seong, completely unfazed, just turns around and leaves. Meanwhile, back at the academy, the students are watching Seong's livestream and losing their minds over how strong he has become. SEAH proudly says her uncle is amazing, and the others agree that he seems to get stronger every single day. None of them even knew the Conqueror's tomb could be cleared like that. At the same time, one jealous friend is practically burning with envy until another girl points out that Seong looks completely different from the last time they saw him. That was only a month ago, when he'd shown up at SEAH's house looking like an unemployed drunk. One of the girls asks SEAH to introduce her to her uncle, but unfortunately for her, her boyfriend is standing right there and clearly isn't happy about that idea. CAH, meanwhile, is simply glad her uncle has finally started taking better care of himself. Then Hisu reminds her that her 18th birthday is getting close. That's the day she'll officially awaken as a player and finally gain access to her status window. Hisu says it with a strangely sweet, almost snake-like smile. CAH quietly admits she's nervous, while the girl who has a crush on Seong starts talking excitedly about how they'll all be able to enter BattleNet together soon. For students at BattleNet Academy, that day is basically everything. They spend years training and studying for it because the gift class is the main reason the academy exists, and everyone's biggest concern is what kind of gift they'll receive. Then CAH's friend's boyfriend asks whether she thinks CAH will get a good gift. The girl confidently says she probably will, betting on at least an S rank because her father had an SS rank gift, while her mother also had an SS rank gift and was a saint. On top of that, there are rumors that Seong's gift is at least S rank as well. Another girl pushes back, reminding them that it's been years since the system officially confirmed that genetics don't determine someone's gift. Even so, they argue that the stats seem to suggest otherwise. The girl starts getting excited and hopes SEAH will receive something amazing. Hisu then reminds her that their opponent's on the 22nd, and since it's already the 13th, the day is coming up fast. CAH admits that's exactly why she's been feeling so anxious. Hisu reassures her that everything will be fine and tells her not to stress about it. Instead, she should just look forward to seeing what kind of gift she receives. That manages to cheer CAH up a little. Meanwhile, Hisu continues watching her with that same fake, snake-like smile, telling her to simply accept whatever gift fate gives her. Meanwhile, in Tokyo, Japan, a man gets completely cut down by the former Sword King during a training session. The people watching are stunned by how incredible his movements are. Someone asks if the Sword King was always this strong, but the others quickly point out that this round clearly proves otherwise. He's gotten even stronger, and with that enchantment active, he looks more serious than ever. Every one of his abilities has improved compared to before, and now they finally understand just how dangerous he has become. Everyone says they can't wait to see his first official appearance as Ito Ryuhei. Back at the Divergent Guild headquarters, Lee Haeon is furious at her father and demands to know how he could even think about entrusting his daughter to someone like that. She tells him he has no right to make decisions about her life, and when he tries to argue, she immediately snaps back that this is exactly why she left in the first place. Whether she gets married or not is her choice. Her father keeps trying to reason with her, but Haeon loses patience and reminds him that she already said she doesn't want to get married right now before hanging up. Lim Gaeyong asks if she's okay, and Haeon sarcastically asks if she looks okay at all. She's obviously furious. She says she thought the man she'd be meeting would at least be the chubby guy from the new self-defense force. She was already angry about being dragged into an arranged meeting, only to discover the guy was bald. Gaeyong agrees that sounds awful and jokes that being rich clearly doesn't make life easier. Haeon thanks her, saying she's the only person who actually understands her. Gaeyong asks if she's exhausted and suggests she go home and rest, but Haeon says she feels more comfortable staying here. Gaeyong understands and quietly looks outside before apologizing, admitting that work doesn't leave Haeon much time for herself. She also tells Gaeyong that with her S-rank gift and talent, she could easily succeed on her own. That makes Gaeyong think for a moment, before she says being Haeon's bodyguard is her purpose. She intends to stay beside Haeon until the day she inherits the company, but Haeon immediately says she doesn't want that kind of life. She plans to become independent, make her own money, and live wherever she wants so her parents will finally stop trying to force marriage on her. Gaeyong says she understands, though she thinks it's a little unfortunate that Haeon's chosen way of making money is through betting. Haeon quickly argues that betting on the winner is completely legal and should count as an investment. Gaeyong admits that might technically be true, but points out that an investment usually needs to produce some kind of return. Haeon responds by smacking her. She confidently says that this time she'll win big. Gaeyong asks if she's talking about the upcoming Korea versus Japan match, and Haeon asks what else she could possibly mean. She calls it a safe investment because, as depressing as it is, almost every Korean expects Japan to win 3-0. Nobody wants to say it openly, but everyone knows Japan is considered the favorite. Haeon shrugs and says an easy win is still a win, and Gaeyong reluctantly admits she has a point. Then Seong Jihan suddenly calls Haeon. She looks surprised that he's phoning this late, but the moment she answers, whatever he says makes her jump in shock. Meanwhile, Diego Masid heads out for a meal with Seong Jihan and absolutely destroys a huge Korean barbecue spread. He says it's his first time trying Korean beef and he's genuinely happy about it. Then he asks if the restaurant isn't too expensive, but Seong tells him not to worry and says he can order whatever else he wants. Diego immediately asks for a drink and Seong says sure. Diego goes straight for a massive beer and Seong watches him mix drinks like a professional, quietly thinking Diego might actually be even better at it than he is. Diego keeps eating like there's no tomorrow, completely blown away by how good everything tastes. Seong is glad he likes it and tells him to stop being so formal and just speak casually because it'll be easier for both of them. Once they've eaten, Diego finally admits he's still carrying a lot of bitterness. If BattleNet had never appeared, his life wouldn't have fallen apart like this. He used to be a famous soccer star, but everything collapsed almost overnight. He can't make money anymore, and even his wife and son left him. Seong can tell Diego's Korean isn't that great, so he misses parts of the story, but he manages to piece most of it together. Diego Masid had once been a world-famous soccer player from Argentina who seemingly had everything. Then BattleNet appeared, people stopped caring about traditional sports, and soccer basically got forgotten. Diego says that part should be obvious, otherwise, why would a world-famous professional player be in Korea teaching children? After drinking quite a bit, he finally asks Seong to stop dancing around the subject and asks if he really wants him to become a mage. Seong confirms that's exactly what he wants. He explains that Diego's gift strengthens equipment shaped like a soccer ball, making it basically an SS rank soccer god ability. Diego says that's why he always keeps a ball with him, but he still doesn't understand what that has to do with becoming a mage. His mana is terrible, after all. Seong tells him to look at the equipment first. Diego checks it and discovers it's the B-rank Arachne's orb, a holy relic created by the Arachne tribe and wrapped in spider silk, giving it incredible elasticity. Since spiders have legs and the object is shaped like a ball, it counts as a soccer ball, making it practically perfect for Diego. Seong asks what he thinks and explains that the orb could bring out his full potential, the real Diego, the strongest mage he was in his previous life. Diego immediately asks how much it costs. Seong says roughly 500,000 GP, around 50 million. Diego nearly chokes. That's worth more than the house he's currently renting, and even saving for 10 years wouldn't have gotten him enough. He thanks Seong for telling him about it, but Seong says he hasn't even reached the important part yet. He actually plans to give Diego the orb as a gift, and if Diego needs financial help, he'll help with that too. Diego is completely confused and asks why. Seong finally tells him the reason. He wants Diego in his guild. He plans to create his own guild before reaching silver. Diego is stunned and asks whether Seong even has enough money to pull that off. Seong confidently says yes, and that he's about to make even more. Diego starts thinking his new friend has completely lost his mind when Seong shows him his phone. At the same time, Lee Haeon is watching the situation and can't understand Seong's prediction at all. He says the upcoming match will end with 1 win and 3 losses. Korea takes the first round, then Japan wins the next 3. Haeon says there's absolutely no way that's happening because Korea can't beat the Sword King. Soon, both teams face off against Ito Ryuhei, the former Sword King, and he opens his eyes with obvious interest, politely saying it's a pleasure to meet Korea's representatives. The stadium erupts as the host welcomes fans from around the world and prepares to start the match. Diego thinks Seong has to be insane for predicting Korea will win the first round. He isn't trying to disrespect Korea, but the Sword King is the kind of monster capable of wiping out an entire team alone. With someone like that fighting for Japan, Seong admits the prediction sounds ridiculous, but says watching the match will explain everything better than he ever could. The rules are announced. Whichever team gets 3 wins out of 5 rounds wins the match. Ryuhei tells the Japanese team to follow him, but they immediately refuse. They accept him as a teammate, but they won't obey him. Ryuhei asks whether it's because he's Korean, but they explain it's more complicated than that. He's taking a position that was never supposed to belong to him. When he arrived, their longtime friend Seigi was sacrificed so Ryuhei could take his place. They demand to know how he can act so shamelessly and say that, at the very least, he should apologize to Seigi. The argument grows heated, and while Ryuhei says they're clearly confused about something, a sudden attack hits him. Divine punishment tears into him and kills him instantly. Everyone is shocked that the enemy is already attacking, while even the person who launched the skill can't believe it actually connected. Another support ability lands, and everyone realizes the Japanese team was so busy arguing among themselves that they completely failed to notice the incoming attack. Ryuhei resurrects, and the Korean team immediately realizes this could be their chance. They rush him, deciding they need to take down the Sword King first. Ryuhei calls them annoying and slashes the ground in front of them, stopping their charge. Everyone wonders what he's doing, and Seigi asks the same thing. Then Ryuhei drives his own sword straight into his chest. He reminds them that they already said they wouldn't follow him, so if that's how they're going to treat him, he simply won't participate. Just like that, South Korea gets the first kill, and it's basically because Ryuhei killed himself. The commentators are completely stunned that the Sword King went down almost immediately at the start of round 1. The last person to damage him was Lee Jinwook from the Twin Stars Guild, making him the MVP of the round. Diego asks Seong if he actually knew this would happen and how he could possibly predict it. Seong says yes, but he can't explain. It's simply part of the job. For now, he tells Diego to keep watching because everything is unfolding exactly as he remembers. Even the betting odds are identical, meaning Seong gets to cash in. Before the match began, people complained that the odds were suspiciously low and even wondered if the whole thing was rigged. Then Korea easily cleans up the rest of the round, officially taking round 1, with Lee Jinwook earning MVP for taking down the Sword King. Later, the Japanese team confronts Ryuhei and demands to know why he did that. How could he kill himself when he's supposed to be representing their country? Did he seriously think he'd get away with it? Ryuhei simply calls them pathetic. He says he can't stand watching a group of trash players with zero professionalism, and it's no wonder they lost to South Korea. When they demand an explanation, Ryuhei says he isn't interested in joining their little friendship circle. If they refuse to properly recognize him, he'll keep killing himself. They have a choice: win with him or keep losing like they just did. The Japanese team is left in an awful position, but round 2 begins anyway. The Korean players are still confused. Why would the Sword King intentionally kill himself? Some even wonder if he's secretly a double agent, but another Korean says it doesn't really look that way. They start wondering if he'll pull the same stunt again, but the atmosphere has changed, so they assume he probably won't. Even so, they warn each other not to relax. They're fighting the Sword King, and if he decides to go all out, the entire match could end instantly. And that's exactly what happens. Ryuhei wipes out the entire Korean team with a single attack. The last survivor barely has time to realize how serious the situation is before the others are finished. Even Seigi is stunned because Ryuhei looks far stronger than he'd expected. In the following round, Ryuhei raises his sword and kills 2 Koreans at once, then continues cutting through the rest with ridiculous ease. The entire stadium starts shaking from the sight as the crowd erupts. The announcer says that with only 2 strikes, Sword King Ryuhei has wiped out the Korean team, tying the match at 1-1. Then the 4th round begins. Japan takes the 3rd round as well, pushing the overall score to 2-1, forcing Korea to fight even harder, but Ryuhei keeps winning without breaking a sweat. Finally, one Korean rushes him, insisting they can't give him enough time to attack. A support player manages to lock Ryuhei's hand in place, and proudly says they've got him. Another teammate tells the attacker to go for it, even if he takes some damage. The Korean charges forward, but Ryuhei simply releases his sword and moves directly toward the incoming blade. The Koreans have no idea what he's doing. Then Ryuhei uses a power similar to Seong's, causing his sword to move on its own and block the attack. He grabs the sword with his chained hand, breaks free from the restraint, and kills the Korean. The support player can't believe Ryuhei broke out through sheer physical strength. It makes absolutely no sense to them, but Ryuhei doesn't even slow down. He rushes forward and takes the man's head off with one swing. The final Korean players try to stop him by firing at him, but the archer is killed almost immediately. The remaining Japanese players remind everyone they're still there and warn the Koreans not to underestimate them. One of them is still trying to act tough when he suddenly freezes. Ryuhei is already standing beside the last mage, his sword floating directly at the mage's neck. The mage looks at him and sarcastically calls the others useless fools before asking whether that is the heavenly sword. He jokes that ever since Ryuhei moved to Japan, apparently all he did was train to look even cooler. Still, he admits the heavenly sword style is much easier to recognize now. Ryuhei calls him pathetic and says that if he could fight even half as well as he talks, he wouldn't be struggling like this. The mage asks if that's really all there is to the technique. Then he tells Ryuhei to watch carefully as he begins gathering his power. A massive burst of lightning suddenly fires straight toward Ryuhei. Instead of backing away, Ryuhei grabs his sword and says it's perfect. He needed something to test his new technique on. Raising both blades, he unleashes an enormous beam of light directly at the mage. The attack tears through him and splits the arena itself apart, leaving everyone completely speechless at the sheer destructive power. The match is immediately called. Japan wins 3-1. Even the commentator sounds stunned, admitting he never expected such a crushing result at a time like this. As painful as the loss is, he says Korea will have to accept it, endure the defeat, and come back stronger. Diego can't believe the match ended exactly the way Seong predicted. He asks how that's even possible, joking that everyone would probably assume Seong saw the result in a dream. Diego is still completely stunned and asks how much money Seong actually made from the bet. Seong says it wasn't that much. Making money is nice, but what really caught his attention was Ryuhei's final move. The Sword King is much stronger than Seong remembered. If his growth continues at this pace, Seong realizes he might not be able to beat him yet. Even the nameless divine arts might not be enough against him. Ryuhei possesses an SSS rank gift and has reached the absolute peak of the twin sword style, making him a terrifying opponent. Still, Seong refuses to worry about it. No matter how strong Ryuhei becomes, he'll simply become even stronger himself. He tells Ito Ryuhei to wait for him because their direct confrontation is coming soon. Meanwhile, Haeyeon is practically shaking after checking the results of her bets. Her original $5 million wager somehow turned into nearly $200 million. And she can't believe she finally hit it big. She excitedly thanked Song Ji-han because, thanks to his prediction, she managed to make an enormous amount of money. But when she checks everything properly, she realizes she's somehow still $20 million in debt. Following Seong's advice, Haeyeon had originally been convinced that South Korea would lose 3-0, so she kept increasing her bets on that result. She even put $200 million on the 3-0 prediction. Naturally, that prediction completely destroyed her finances. Haeyeon says she didn't just lose $20 million, she lost her bright future along with it. Maybe gambling really isn't something she's suited for. In her mind, the whole thing is an absolute disaster. After that, Seong turns back to Diego and says it's finally time to discuss the real reason they came together. He asks whether Diego is willing to sign a contract with him. Diego honestly can't understand why someone like Seong would want a contract with someone like him, and asks if he's really that valuable. Seong tells him to think about what just happened. He predicted the Korea-Japan match perfectly, and he's just as confident about Diego's future. He looks directly at him and says that Diego Masid will become the strongest mage in the world. The contract isn't charity, it's an investment. Seong wants Diego to come with him and become part of his future guild. Diego hesitates, remembering how long it's been since someone trusted him this much. After BattleNet appeared and destroyed his old career, he thought he'd never again feel like an important member of a team. Seong's offer gives him that feeling back. He realizes there's no reason to reject such a chance. Diego agrees to do his best and promises he'll never forget what Seong has done for him. He'll repay the favor someday. Seong likes that determination and tells him he'll be waiting for that day. Later, Lim Gaeyong enters another match and immediately takes control, cutting down opponents one after another and securing the lead. Seeing how dangerous she is, the other players decide to temporarily team up and rush her together. Gaeyong simply calls them pathetic and activates Sujigrima, wiping them all out with ease. The match ends with her taking first place. She admits that 5 kills for a first place finish isn't bad, but she still can't feel satisfied with it. Compared to the overwhelming strength of the Great Sword King during the Korea-Japan match, or Seong Ji-han, who is rapidly heading toward becoming an immortal legend, she feels like she's still far behind. Gaeyong starts wondering if she began falling off after joining the Twin Stars Guild. If she wants to stand alongside people like them, she knows she needs to push herself much harder and find a way to improve. Meanwhile, Seo watches a report about her father and immediately starts shaking. Hisu notices and asks if she's okay. Seo says she's fine, but her face makes it obvious that's a lie. She says it's only been a day or two, so she'll be okay eventually. Hisu offers to stay with her for the night, saying it might help not being alone right now, but Seah insists she's fine and tells her not to worry. She thanks both of them for bringing her home since her uncle was busy, and she wasn't sure how she'd get back. The driver tells her to call if she ever needs help, and admits he seriously messed up the other day. Seah says at least he's honest enough to admit it. Hisu then brings up her earlier suggestion and says that if Seah wants to go through with it, they can start preparing right away. Seah admits she honestly doesn't know yet. Hisu says there's no reason to turn it down, but before they can continue, the car suddenly slams on the brakes, and Hisu's face smacks against something. She immediately asks why the driver stopped so hard. He tells them they're already at the Sword Palace, but then points out the people gathered around the entrance. At the same time, Seong is moving across the city at ridiculous speed, jumping from one building to another before finally leaping all the way back down to the ground. He can tell his body feels lighter than before, like his abilities have improved again. Looking toward the distance, he thinks being this high up really does feel better. He sits on top of the building like some budget Spider-Man, and remembers doing the exact same thing back in America, finding somewhere high and just getting lost in his thoughts. Those memories bring Ryuhei back into his mind, and suddenly he understands why this height reminded him of him. The truth is, Seong never fought Ryuhei in his previous life. After half the countries in the world disappeared, the strongest fighters started gathering together, and Yoon Sejin, who had been known as humanity's greatest warrior, suddenly vanished. Seong still doesn't know what caused it, but the current Yoon Sejin is already as strong as he was during his prime. That means Seong can't afford to relax just because he's growing quickly. He needs to become far stronger than he ever was in his previous life, which means mastering the nameless divine arts as soon as possible. With that thought, he decides he needs to head somewhere else, and simply vanishes from the rooftop. Back at the Sword Palace, the driver tells the reporters to move aside, but they immediately approach CAH and introduce themselves as being from Right to Know TV. They ask her for just a few words, but Hisu tells her to ignore them. The reporters refuse to back off, claiming that people believe CAH's previous statement only made the Sword King even angrier. They demand an answer and crowd around her, even telling the driver to move, because they specifically want to interview her while Jihan isn't around. They pretend they're doing it for the public and ask her to show some empathy. Then Seong suddenly arrives, absolutely furious, asking what the hell they think they're doing. With telekinesis, he starts dropping them one after another, slamming them onto the ground until they're all sprawled out and groaning. They complain that Jihan actually dared to attack reporters and ask if he doesn't care about his public image. Chong says he does care, which is exactly why he was generous with them. Since it was their first offense, he didn't go all out. They should be thankful he stopped there. The pressure behind his words makes everyone realize he isn't joking. He opens the door and tells SEAH to get up because they're going home. He thanks the driver for protecting her, and the man says it was nothing. Hisu then tells her uncle to take good care of SEAH. Seong thanks that snake for the concern, clearly suspecting she has something to do with all of this. As they leave, Hisu stays behind, lowers her head, and quietly laughs. She admits it was getting hard to keep everything hidden. People then start wondering if she's actually that student, the granddaughter of news company CEO Kim Taewon. Hisu looks towards CAH and thinks that things are probably already over for her. Meanwhile, Ryuhei gives an interview with Dalmobi and coldly says he has nothing to do with any daughter. He claims he left his entire past behind when he went to Japan, so as far as he's concerned, he has no daughter. He tells them to stop wasting time on personal questions, and Seong realizes that's exactly why they came there in the first place. He gets so angry that he suddenly wants to beat Ryuhei himself, especially since the man seems to be getting stronger. Still, the whole situation leaves SEAH feeling miserable. Later, SEAH talks to her uncle and asks if he remembers promising to grant her one wish. Seong immediately asks if this is about finding the Shadow Queen. CAH says yes, and then drops the bomb that she probably already knows what she wants to ask for. Seong is caught off guard when she says she may have already found the Shadow Queen. Her deduction once again reminds him just how ridiculously smart his niece is. Then, on another day, a new game begins, and everyone watching starts wondering if they entered the wrong room. They ask what Jihan is doing, and he calmly says he's going to break the stands. He wants to find out once and for all whether that elf is actually the Queen of Shadows. The day before, SEAH had already explained her theory to him. She believed the purple, heavily covered elf sitting among the spectators was the strongest candidate. She admitted she wasn't completely certain, but there were way too many suspicious details. At first, they had suspected the elf queens sitting on the thrones, because both openly carried themselves like royalty, and Seong agreed that made sense. But CAH said this particular woman felt much closer to the concept of a shadow. When Seong asked why, she told him to watch the video she had sent. Her first clue was the elf's eyes. Black eyes weren't impossible for elves, but even the whites were completely dark. SEAH believed that had to mean something, and that wasn't even the weirdest part. The elf had been watching the highest-ranked player even before the match started. She kept staring at the strongest player around, and when she watched other matches, she always focused on whoever ended up in first place. She did it before the match had even begun, almost like she already knew who would win. CAH asked if that wasn't suspicious, and Seong agreed there was no way it could simply be luck. Then she showed him the biggest clue in the final video. She told him to look carefully at the shadow underneath the elf's feet. Something seemed to be emerging from it. The video quality made it difficult to see, but Sia thought the shape was strange enough that she couldn't believe she was the only person who noticed it. She asked if Seong thought it was worth investigating. Instead of immediately answering, he paused and asked if she had figured all of this out by herself. SEAH proudly said yes. She had simply kept collecting little clues until they started connecting. Seong then asks if she's really doing all this just for him. He brushes the concern aside by saying it isn't like she had anything better to do anyway. Still, He thanks her for putting in so much effort and promises he'll investigate the elf during the next opportunity. He heads toward the Colosseum, while Seah tells him she hopes her theory is right. But Seong reminds himself that he still has a promise to keep. Before leaving, he asks Eah what she wants as her reward. Whatever her wish is, he says he'll grant it. Seah simply thanks him and finally tells him what she wants. Later, Jihan is back in the Colosseum, absolutely wrecking everyone in sight. After reaching 10 kills, he figures first place is basically secured, so now he can focus on the plan he had in mind, breaking through the barrier around the stands. A barrier separates the arena from the spectators, and its strength is comparable to a diamond-level support barrier. Normally, it blocks every attack and ability coming from the battlefield, but thanks to the wandering eye, Jihan can see its true condition and realizes he doesn't need to destroy the whole thing. All he needs is a tiny opening to look through to the other side. He takes his position in front of the barrier while everyone assumes he's just bluffing. Jihan, however, knows he can pull it off with the weapon he obtained from the dungeon, the Phoenix Arrow. He can't unleash its full power because that would be too dangerous, but a single piercing strike should be enough to crack the barrier. He wants to see the queen's face, so he channels the martial devotion of the three talents path to immortality and strikes. A tiny hole appears. He keeps hitting that exact same spot again and again with the path to immortality until the barrier finally tears open. Everyone watching realizes he actually did it. Without wasting a second, Jihan activates the wandering eye, knowing the barrier will repair itself soon. The instant he looks through, he demands that the queen reveal herself and asks who she really is. Then, without warning, everything around him falls into complete darkness. Jihan has no idea where he is. When he turns around, a massive light suddenly appears behind him, catching him completely off guard. From within that darkness, a pair of enormous demonic eyes stares directly at him. The sight is so overwhelming that even Jihan is shaken. The next day, he looks completely exhausted and admits that the experience drained him. He still can't calm himself down, and honestly, it's no surprise. Seeing something with that kind of power trapped inside a bronze-ranked body was terrifying. He thinks it would have been frightening even if he'd encountered it in his old body before regression. Still, he can't deny that such power could become incredibly useful. After recovering, Jihan checks the achievement shop and notices that all the rewards he's accumulated have raised its level to 5. At this level, constellation slots have finally been added. He can now choose from several constellations, but Jihan knows it's still too early to spend his resources on them. Earth is only in the tutorial stage, so he decides to hold off for now. Instead, he buys another title slot. When he opens his status window, he sees that he's reached level 22, meaning only 3 more levels remain before promotion. With his current strength, martial power, and titles, he's already practically at silver level anyway. There's a specific reason he wanted another title slot. He plans to use it for the martial god successor title he'll obtain soon. Jihan's martial power is currently 27, and once it reaches 30, he'll gain access to the nameless divine arts and establish a connection with the martial god. That connection is what will allow him to obtain the martial god successor title, the exact same title he carried until his death in his previous life. This time, he absolutely has to reclaim it. He knows what's coming, and he'll need every bit of power he can get. Soon, he'll have to face the man he hates most, the coward who abandoned his own daughter. Meanwhile, right in the heart of Gangnam, close to several schools, Jihan is house hunting with his niece. The realtor says a 200 square meter place should be more than enough for the two of them, but Seah thinks it's still too small, so they keep looking, and Jihan figures she probably didn't like the place anyway. Honestly, he expected that. She'd spent her entire life inside the Sword Palace, so a regular apartment was never going to impress her. Still, he remembers that moving out was actually her wish. He thinks back to the day she asked him about it, when she looked completely miserable. She wanted to leave the Sword Palace as soon as possible, because every corner of that place reminded her of Yoon Sejin. Jihan knows how suffocating that must feel. The realtor keeps hyping up the layout and spacious rooms, but Jihan only cares about finding somewhere CAH genuinely likes. He says they need something bigger. She'll be awakening as a player soon, so they'll also need enough space for a BattleNet connector. The realtor agrees to search for more options, and says she must be lucky to have such a dependable, powerful uncle. Jihan brushes that off, saying he still has a long way to go. The realtor then admits he's actually a fan, and promises to keep cheering for him. He explains that he's the one who's grateful because he used to work for the Sword King's household. When the news broke that the Sword King had gone to Japan, it shocked him enough that he quit. After that, he couldn't stop worrying about Seiya and wondering how difficult things must have been for her. So seeing how well she's doing now is a huge relief. He tells her she still has a long road ahead but congratulates her on finally awakening, confidently saying she's bound to receive a great gift. Jihan can tell the man is genuinely worried about her. Ever since the Korea-Japan match, attention around Seah has exploded. Everyone is watching for her awakening and waiting to see what gift she'll receive, but Jihan knows what's coming. She'll awaken an F-rank gift, and once that happens, all this attention will turn poisonous. People will rip her apart online and tear her down for it. He refuses to let that happen. For now, he needs to keep people away from her, especially those reporters. Meanwhile, that snake Hisu is already making moves. She's talking to people about August 22nd, Seah's birthday, saying she'll be at the school's gift center and promising that she can help them get an interview. Her friend calls her ridiculously fake, saying it's exactly what you'd expect from the granddaughter of a media company CEO. He snaps back that nobody asked him to stick around. Hee-soo tells him not to act like that and says none of this would have happened if it weren't for him. He asks why she hates SEAH so much in the first place. Hee-soo says SEAH isn't even from a respectable family, yet people constantly compare the two of them. Without BattleNet, she says, SEAH would be a complete nobody. He asks why she wants the interview so badly, and Hee-soo claims it'll help her article, pretending she's doing CH's family a favor. Then she reveals what she really wants. It would be even better if SEAH awakened some trash-tier gift and watched her whole life fall apart. The sheer venom in her words makes it obvious she's been waiting for this. The guy calls her a demon, and honestly, he completely agrees. He even hopes that disgusting hand from the sludge zombie swallows her whole. Hee-soo says that's exactly why his role is so important. He's SEAH's uncle and always stays by her side. Then she asks whether he's actually confident he can beat Jihan if things get physical. The guy tells her to relax. He's not worried about that little bug at all. He only tells her to keep her promise. Hee-soo says he's seriously scary, but assures him not to worry. Once everything is finished, he'll be free to do whatever he wants with the girl. Back at Seoul's Gangnam BattleNet Academy, only 14 hours remain before Seiya's awakening. Hee-soo approaches her again and asks her not to be like that, but Seiya immediately tells her to stop. She already said she isn't doing an interview. Hee-soo keeps pushing anyway, asking her to reconsider just one more time and claiming it's all for SEAH's own good. But SEAH refuses again. Hee-soo then brings up how people have been blaming Sa lately because of the Sword King, even though none of it is her fault. She says they need a better story to bury all that controversy, and even claims she begged her grandfather to help. SEAH stays polite and simply thanks her for worrying about her, but says she doesn't need any of this right now. She excuses herself and heads to the bathroom. The moment she's gone, Hee-soo starts cursing her internally, furious that SEAH wouldn't cooperate. Still, she isn't worried. They've already positioned people outside the gift hall, ready to grab Seiya the moment she comes out. That night, Hee-soo keeps thinking about what kind of gift Seiya will awaken. Since the awakening is happening no matter what, she wants an article that completely destroys SEAH's reputation. And if SEAH really gets an F-rank gift, that would make everything even more perfect. Meanwhile, SEAH escapes to the bathroom just to clear her head. She thinks about how difficult it was to keep her expression calm when she already knew the truth. She knew exactly what Hee-soo really thought of her. She remembers overhearing Hee-soo talking behind her back, asking someone if they were still hanging around SEAH, and mocking them for pretending to be best friends. When someone told her to stop talking like that, Hee-soo admitted she had no intention of cutting SEAH off until she'd taken everything she could from her. Another girl asked what she could possibly want from someone whose father was already a lost cause. Hee-soo laughed and said they were way too soft, asking if they'd forgotten that her family owned a media company. According to her, the best time to take everything from someone was when they were already falling into hell. She even hoped SEAH would awaken an F-rank gift, completely break down, and give her plenty of desperate photos to use. The others called her crazy, but some of them also admitted it sounded interesting. SEAH heard every horrible word. Seeing Hee-soo's real face hit her hard, but the shock only lasted for a moment before fear took over. What if she really did awaken an F-rank gift? Hee-soo wasn't the only person hiding her true intentions, and suddenly Sia only has one thought: anything but F-rank. She silently begs the heavens to give her something good. Then the moment finally arrives. As SEAH stands inside the gift hall, something suddenly feels different. The light from her awakening gift shines directly into her face, making her flinch. But 5 hours earlier, Jihan had already realized there wasn't much time left. He gets called over and immediately asks whether CAH is safe inside the gift hall. He's told that she's under guard, so he thanks them and orders them to make absolutely sure nobody gets near her, especially reporters. They assure him the security is extremely tight. Not even regular school staff can approach her without permission, and the government itself is taking the situation seriously. That reminds Jihan of the call he received from Park Yoon-sik the previous day about the Sword Palace donation situation. During that conversation, Park also reminded him that SEAH would be awakening as a player the next day. Jihan confirms it and asks whether SEAH knows about the danger surrounding her. Park says things are bad enough that someone might actually try to break into the gift hall. Jihan immediately realizes that Manager Park understands the situation perfectly. Park asks if even stronger security can be arranged, but Jihan tells him the government has already assigned guards specifically to protect SEAH. Even then, Park asks him for one more favor. Soon after, they arrive at the gift hall. The staff show Jihan inside and explain that they've even prepared a chair for him, so all he needs to do is sit there and wait. He thanks them and says he'll see them after midnight. One of the guards tells him to speak up immediately if he needs anything. For now, all Jihan can do is wait for SEAH's awakening and hope the future he's trying so desperately to change doesn't repeat itself. Jihan sits right beside the door, letting out a long sigh and trying to convince himself not to overthink things. This time, he'll be right there with SEAH, so he'll be able to protect her no matter what happens. For now, all he can do is hope the gift he gave her will at least comfort her. It's a mirror pendant hanging from a necklace, something he specifically chose for her. Then, with only 5 minutes left before CAH's awakening, someone suddenly announces that he really is here. It's Hisu, and she's brought a cameraman with her. That snake smugly comments that they must be seeing each other pretty often. Jihan recognizes her as one of CAH's friends and asks if the man beside her is a reporter. He's already standing, visibly furious, demanding to know how she even got inside when every entrance was supposed to be locked down. Hisu casually asks if he really doesn't understand how many connections a media company has. A friend helped her get inside, and she doesn't even bother hiding the fact that she sneaked in. When Jihan calls her out for it, she simply shrugs and claims she came because she has business with the school and needs to interview SEAH. He immediately cuts her off and orders her to leave. CAH is going home as soon as the awakening ends, and this is Hisu's first and final warning. The reporter starts getting nervous, asking whether this is really okay because the situation clearly looks dangerous. Hisu says that only makes things more difficult. They absolutely need the interview. Jihan warns her that if she keeps forcing the issue, he won't just stand there and watch. Hisu asks what she's supposed to do because she obviously can't beat him herself. Then she comes up with another idea. A level 27 support player, Seong Jihan, supposedly protecting his niece, gets attacked by an unknown level 50 warrior, and right then, a fighter suddenly appears behind Jihan, already preparing to smash him. Inside the gift hall, CAH is on her knees, completely crushed. The system congratulates her for awakening as a player, then reveals her gift, Late Bloomer, F rank. She can barely whisper that this was exactly what she prayed wouldn't happen. At that same moment, the blonde thug behind Jihan lands a heavy blow directly against his head. Inside the hall, CAH feels like everything is over. Outside, Jihan is absolutely furious after taking the hit. He slowly turns toward the attacker with pure killing intent in his eyes. After landing the blow, the blonde thug tells him to stay down because he plans to give all his love to SEAH himself. The second Jihan hears him say her name like that, he asks how the hell he dares. The blonde is surprised that Jihan is still standing and admits he's tougher than expected. Jihan immediately punches back, but when his fist connects, he realizes the guy's body has stone skin. The blonde grins, saying it looks like Jihan did his homework, then asks why he doesn't seem surprised. Still acting cocky, he drives another punch into Jihan's side. Hisu watches in disbelief, wondering if her fighter is actually winning. The blonde keeps running his mouth, saying Jihan clearly doesn't know his place, despite everyone calling him a rising star. He orders him to answer when spoken to and keeps throwing punches, even wondering how many hits it'll take before Jihan finally opens his mouth. Jihan's answer is one punch. A perfectly clean shot to the chin sends the blonde flying so effortlessly that everyone is left stunned. Then Jihan uses his power to form a giant hand, grabs the thug by the hair, and lifts him straight off the ground. The blonde can barely understand what just happened. Jihan coldly tells him that he really is exactly what he looks like, a thug, and promises he'll make sure this guy never tries something like this again. Then he yanks him upward so violently that it nearly tears his scalp apart. The cameraman immediately bolts, while Hisu finally starts panicking. The blonde crashes face first onto the floor right beside her feet, and she completely loses it as her entire plan collapses. Inside the hall, SEAH is still devastated and starts crying, but she quickly forces herself to stop. This isn't the time to cry. Tears won't change anything. She has to get up because her uncle is waiting for her. As she walks toward the door, she starts wondering what happens next. Even if she tries to live as a player, she'll probably remain stuck in bronze forever with an obvious F-rank gift. Then she reads the description for Late Bloomer, which says that great vessels require time to mature. That only confuses her even more. After all that praying, this is what she got? But the moment she opens the door, she hears Hisu screaming. The blonde thug is already completely wrecked, with half the hair on his head ripped out. SEAH freezes and asks her uncle what happened. Jihan simply says it's karma coming back around. Hisu starts screaming that he's insane. Both of them turn toward SEAH, and Hisu demands to know how he dares do something like this. Does he even know who her grandfather is? She proudly announces that he's the CEO of Taiwan Daily, but Jihan just looks at her and asks, so what? He casually throws the ripped out hair of the blonde thug toward her, making her flinch. Then he asks what exactly her family's news empire has to do with anything. Is she planning to manipulate public opinion against him? Hisu snaps that she won't stop there. She'll spread fake stories, destroy his entire family, and make everyone despise them because, according to her, people don't care about the truth anyway. She points out that Jihan already has bad press surrounding the Sword King, so this is the perfect opportunity for her. Jihan simply tells her to go ahead. He says they can always leave South Korea if things get that bad. That's when Hisu finally realizes how badly she screwed up. Jihan asks what she plans to do now, because sooner or later, she'll have to answer for what she did. As he says it, a fireball begins forming in his hand. Hisu tells him to stop bluffing. She mocks him for acting like he's somebody important, claiming that without BattleNet and Yoon Sejin protecting him, He wouldn't even have the courage to look her in the eye. Jihan simply says, fine. Then he tosses the flames straight toward her. Since she clearly refuses to think about the consequences of what she did, he'll teach her himself. He makes one thing completely clear. This is what happens when someone goes after his family. Then the flames engulf her, and Jihan actually sets her on fire.